From trekking across Australia as Norman Reedus to exploring a new fantasy world as Charlie Cox who looks like Robert Pattinson, 2025 had it all. We managed a crew of misfit superheroes as well as a crew of many clones of ourselves. We got some great sequels to long-running game franchises as well as some disappointing ones. Battlefield finally returned to form just as Call of Duty decided to go up in flames. We peaked with our friends and took down some clankers with some people who may or may not shoot us in the back later. We relived the glory days, made some tea, went fast, split some fiction, got lost in mansions, became a pirate, and went on an audiovisual journey while playing a 20-year-old puzzle game. None of our games run well anymore, and I'm still here to talk to you about video games. Hello, my name is Trollisms, and welcome to my annual gaming wrap-up, where I talk about every single game that I played that came out this year. I'll review and rank them from worst to best, as well as talk about some of the big things that happened in gaming this year. I'm really going to need a better name for this thing if I'm going to keep doing it. As you can see, this video is big, even bigger than last year. In 2024, I played 42 new video games. This year I played 61. Shit, yeah, okay, no time to waste. Obligatory, this is my opinion, yada yada. You've all seen a ranking video before, surely. Grab yourself a drink and some snacks, because this is going to be a big one. In late 2024, there was a show that aired on Amazon Prime called Secret Level. It was an anthology series where each episode focused on a self-contained story about a video game. As with many anthology series, each episode was a little hit or miss. Some were great, like the Armored Core episode, and surprisingly the one based on Concord. And then there were the bad ones, like the Sony one, or the nothing burger that the Mega Man one was. But there were two episodes in particular of Secret Level that I think had people talking about them the most. First was the Space Marine episode, because yeah, holy shit, this is one of the best pieces of animation I've ever seen in my life. And then there was the Pac-Man episode, which was talked about not because it was particularly good, but because it elicited more of a what the fuck was that kind of reaction from everyone who watched it. It wasn't bad, it was just very weird and very messed up and very out of left field for our usually family-friendly yellow mascot that we've come to know and love. This Secret Level episode, like many others, turned out to be kind of an advertisement for a game it was based on. And it wasn't long until Shadow Labyrinth was officially announced as part of Pac-Man's 45th anniversary, a dark sci-fi fantasy Metroidvania. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of Pac-Man, but I'm not some purist on how the character should be portrayed. If someone has a weird and wonderful idea on where to take this franchise, by all means, go for it. Lord only knows this franchise has already done pretty much everything else. Franchise reinvention isn't always a bad thing, and sometimes you can modernize an old franchise for a new generation and do a decent to okay job of it. Or you could be Bomberman Act Zero, and nothing is worse than Bomberman Act Zero. Right? Right? My worst game of 2025 goes to Shadow Labyrinth. Just like 2024's worst game of the year, Funko Fusion, Shadow Labyrinth is a game that I refused to do a proper review on because I just hated it straight out of the gate. Everything from the cheap presentation of the menus to the bad feeling controls, the dense as shit story to the animations, everything just felt terrible from the get-go. So it's not often I refund games, and this game was one of 3 this year that I refunded. All for various reasons, which we'll get to eventually, but this is the only one I refunded for being straight up garbage. Now, I'm not usually a fan of Metroidvanias. Getting lost in a huge expansive map is not something I really enjoy. But I was willing to give it a shot anyway because I love Pac-Man, and as fucked up as it was, the episode of Secret Level that was based on this game was actually really cool. But I gave up before many of the usual Metroidvania mechanics started to, present themselves. It really was just an absolute slap in the face. Now, to give this game some credit, it's better than Funko Fusion, and it's better than Pac-Man Chomp Champs, so at least our starting point this year is 2 games higher than last year. It's just unfortunate for some reason Pac-Man has had this mean streak of absolute stinkers. Hopefully that changes soon, maybe even later in this video. While this certainly is the worst game I played this year, I doubt it's the worst game that actually came out this year. That's probably Mind's Eye or some shit, which thankfully I did not play. And no, Shadow Labyrinth is not a worse game than Bomberman Act Zero. That thankfully is still the worst gaming reboot of all time, or at least I think it is. I can't say that I've done much research on the topic, that's a video idea for another day. The next game I'm going to be talking about was probably an objectively worse game, but this one hurt me more, so that's why it's my worst game of 2025. A few months ago, my friends and I were given some keys to try a little horror game called Macabre, a few days before its official release. Oh, you haven't heard of Macabre? Well, you probably wouldn't have because it wasn't very good. Macabre is a co-op extraction horror game based in the Australian outback where you're hunted by some sort of cryptid and you have to do missions around the place and extract before getting killed by it or the time runs out. Before we get into the bad, and the really bad with Macabre, I do think that this game did a good job on one thing: atmosphere. With these somewhat limited resources this game seems to have, they were able to fairly faithfully recreate the feeling of wandering through the bush in Australia. The sounds and the look are pretty on point, and I would almost go as far to say that it's one of the best recreations of an Australian environment I've seen in gaming, until I played a little game by some Japanese madman this year that kind of fucked everything up this game had going for it. So yeah, there isn't really any reason to play this game. And while the game is in early access and actively being developed on, I find it hard to believe that it'll get to a point where I would recommend it. I will never say never though, stranger things have happened. The game was just way too early for a public launch. The gameplay, bland, enemy AI, broken, gameplay variety, not much going on. Level design that seemed antithetical to the controls of the player, weak tutorialization, and weak explanations of progression. Just a weak game overall. And so while the game launched into early access, I don't believe you can use that as a shield for criticism when there are so many things wrong with the game. Macabre launched at a $30 Australian price point, and before the end of its launch day, the price was halved. I'm not talking about it being on sale, it was straight up halved to $15. Whether it's inexperience or maliciousness, it doesn't really matter. As a game developer, you cannot make games like this anymore. So I just want to talk about a little theory that's been swimming around my head for a bit now. While it is now easier than ever to create games from user-friendly development tools and an almost infinite amount of tutorials on the internet to learn from, almost anyone who has the time and are willing to learn can make a game nowadays. But competition has never been fiercer. Now let's add that with the fact that we are hitting a bit of a stagnation point on what video games are capable of being. Like, if you look at the generation jumps between, from the PlayStation 1 all the way to the PlayStation 5, the smallest jump in graphical and technical innovation is with the PS4 to PS5 era. With all of the other generations, you really felt the difference between them. This one, not so much. So for the last 10 years or so, everyone has been kind of competing at the same level. Not much is evolving and not much is changing. And due to a certain few companies buying up all the RAM and GPUs in the world, odds are we're going to be at this level for a little while. Let's say that in 2025 there are 100 good, fully developed, co-op horror games to play that are currently available on the Steam store to choose from. Why are you going to choose this? Now next year, another 10 good co-op horror games have been developed and released. Now there are 110 different good co-op horror games for people to choose from, because those other 100 games are still good. Why are they going to pick this? The other thing with games that are fully developed is now there's little to no development cost. So all of these fully developed games are just going to get cheaper over time, go on sale more often, deeper and deeper discounts. It's always going to be harder and harder for games to stand out. Much more for indie games as they are smaller in scope, although the trade-off for that is that indie games can have a lot more creative freedom. But then again, why would I choose to play a Macabre? And even if this game was in a much better technical state than what it launched as, why is anyone going to play this game? I'm kind of reminded of this old asymmetrical horror game my friends and I played 12 years ago, I think it was, called Damned. Admittedly, it's not a very good game, it was buggy and kind of a mess, but it was fun. That game 12 years ago, which also released in an unfinished state, was more fun and felt more complete than Macabre now. Despite it having much less scope, much less tech to work with, and it sure as shit didn't have a $350,000 Kickstarter attached. Believe it or not, I did not come into this video with the intent to shoot and bury this game as hard as I did, so I'm going to move on. No, officer, it wasn't me. It was already dead when I got here. Mika and the Witch's Mountain is a game that commits probably the biggest cardinal sin any video game could commit. It was boring. So boring, in fact, that when I reviewed it initially, I had just no idea on how to make the video. This game stumped me so hard because I was just so bored. I had actually played the demo for this game long before I got the key to review the game, but it was so bland that I'd just forgotten I'd ever played it. So when I accepted the key to review the game and booted it up and then started to play, I panicked. And I never would have accepted the key if I actually remembered playing the game in the first place, because I would have known I would have gotten myself into this predicament. Now, just because this game is only just above Macabre on the list, I don't want you all to get the wrong idea. There is a massive power gap between the quality of this game and the bottom 2 games on this list. I would call this a competent game, although I don't believe it achieves everything it sets out to do, and most of that comes with setting up an engaging atmosphere to offset the slow and peaceful gameplay of the game. The game looks nice, but it falls flat in the audio design and music of the game just not hitting the mark. There are long stretches of no sound, music fading in and out in very jarring ways, and looping low quality sound effects. I don't hate this game. I think the devs actually gave this game some love and care. I just don't think they hit the mark. It happens. I think that there are some people out there that will like this game, but for me, $30 is not a price point I would have been willing to pay for the game. And it's not a price point I think anyone should be paying for a game like this. Maybe if it was like $10, then I would say that's an okay price to pay. The game can be completed in under 3 hours, which I would say is too short. But let me tell you, those 3 hours felt like 30. So, add time dilation to the list of this game's features. You ever go back and play a game that you loved 10 or so years ago and find out that it wasn't as good as you remember? I kind of got that feeling with a game that released just this year. Kindergarten 3 is the 3rd game in the series of essentially twisted visual novels, based around a kindergarten with a bunch of arsehole kids, an abusive teacher, and a janitor that will murder you if you look at him funny. I really liked the first 2 installments of this series, but either my humour tastes have changed, or maybe this premise was just kind of worn too thin for me because I just really didn't like this game. It was more of the same, but with less charm. A glorified visual novel where the novelty has just kind of run out. The puzzles felt uninteresting, the story and scenarios weren't really grabbing me, the game feels like it has less features than the second one, it just didn't have the sauce this time around. I'm not going to be mean to this game, unlike some of the others that are around this part on the list, because I feel like this placement is more of my general feelings on the game being negative than the actual game just being straight up bad. I mean, it has a 94% positive rating on Steam. I know I'm in the minority here. I did read a few of the reviews and a lot of people were saying that this does feel a bit lesser than the second game, but they still liked it, which is kind of similar to what I'm saying. I just didn't like it. And I think that's fine. The game is exactly what it says it is. I just didn't vibe with it at all. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just one of those things that happens to you when you get older. You hit 30 and then bam, you no longer like the kindergarten games. This may be the most surprising placement on the list for a few of my longtime watchers. How was Killing Floor 3 not last? I tore into this game multiple times, and while I would put this up there with one of the most disappointing games I've played this year, if I'm judging the game based on how fun it is and how much I enjoyed it, this is where it lands. If you remove any mentions of the name Killing Floor, we're left with a pretty middle-of-the-road horde shooter, which is somewhat enjoyable in short bursts, but mostly unremarkable. But that isn't all that this game is. Unfortunately, it shares the same title with 2 iconic and amazing horde shooters. Middle of the road isn't good enough for a $60 game, and it sure as shit isn't good enough to be considered a Killing Floor game. The biggest problem with Killing Floor 3 is that instead of being an evolution of the Killing Floor series, it feels like it's trend chasing other games. So I made 2 videos on this game. One was when the beta was open, which was originally 2 or 3 weeks before launch, but the game got delayed after the massive negative backlash from a lot of the people who played it. It's weird to think that my video may have had a non-zero chance in playing a part in the delay. The delay did help Tripwire polish up the game a little, but it wasn't really enough. Polish wasn't what this game needed. It needed a redesign. Specialist being tied to perks was a criminally stupid move, although I do believe that they have now fixed that. Congrats on re-adding a feature that was present in a 16-year-old video game. You did well there. A problem that pops up in the age of live services and continued DLC and development for games is sequels. You want to make a sequel to a game with 10 years worth of content being added to it, you're almost always going to fall short content-wise. But if you're also falling short features and design-wise, then why are you even making a sequel? Yeah, Killing Floor 3 has some new features like gun modding, but the guns feel like shit to use and they look like it too. Specialists now have a rechargeable ultimate ability? Yeah, thanks, I fucking hate it. You're a Killing Floor game. Be a Killing Floor game. This is just nothing. This game doesn't justify its own existence, and I don't know why they even bothered. But because they did bother, for some reason, we will be giving Killing Floor 3 an award. And the award is for being the biggest waste of potential of 2025. Surprisingly enough, there was some pretty tough competition for the award this year. You'll find out more later. But Killing Floor 3 was such a giant and catastrophic misfire that it's hard to justify giving this award to anyone else. Speaking of why did they even bother, welcome to the lazy, unnecessary cash grab that is Gears of War Reloaded. Gears Reloaded is a remaster of the first Gears of War game. No, I'm not joking. Originally titled Gears Ultimate Edition, which came out in 2015, got re-released in 2025 with the only improvements being 4K capability and a higher FPS rate. And it adds some post-launch DLC or something into the full package. It really isn't worth new repackaging and pretending that it is a very new remastered game. This could well have been an update. I did not make it past the first act of this game, and there are a few main contributing factors as to why. Firstly is when I saw the AI teammates do this. Secondly was when I died after a 5-minute turret section to an enemy in the next encounter and didn't get a checkpoint, and it sent me back like an extra 10 minutes to the last checkpoint. That sucked. Thirdly, the game kind of runs like shit. And the last reason is that Gears of War is a 19-year-old game, and the gameplay in this game feels exactly like it did all the way back when it released. And a bit of a hot take here, Gears 1 is the worst Gears of War. It was fine for its time, but it is pitifully bland now. Even back in the Xbox 360 days, I would replay the shit out of Gears 2 and 3, but I would never go back to Gears 1. Which kind of begs the question, why are we getting a second Gears of War 1 remaster while Gears 2 and 3 haven't been touched? You could have done a Master Chief Collection type thing with the original Gears trilogy, and it would do absolute gangbusters. People love Gears 2 and Gears 3. They are genuinely great games. This game, while iconic, it's kind of arse. That's okay. It was good for its time, it's not very good now. It led to some great things. So this is not the second game I refunded, but I would have refunded it if I bought it. Luckily, it was on Game Pass. So I played it through that before I cancelled Game Pass due to the massive price hike. Oh, right. Game Pass, Microsoft, Xbox. Oh, look, I don't know if you guys are ready for this. Are we ready for our first rant of the video? Okay, well, this is probably the only time Xbox is going to come up. So let's talk about Xbox and 2025. God, where do we even start? 2025 may be the year we look back on and say, yeah, look, this is the year the Xbox died. This all started with the shift in strategy of, instead of being a console-driven market, Xbox are going to focus on becoming a multi-platform games publisher. A move that you think would be pretty smart considering their market share in the console market is shrinking year on year. And I would contribute to that maybe 50% of Xbox's death to the Xbox One. That console, or more accurately the way they revealed it, permanently damaged the Xbox brand. But if you look to other brands like Nintendo, a bad console is not a death blow. You can recover. I think where Xbox truly failed is with its gaming lineup. Avowed, South of Midnight, Gears Reloaded, Keeper, Ninja, Gaiden 4, Outer Worlds 2, Grounded 2, Oblivion Remastered, Doom the Dark Ages, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 Remake, and Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Those are the Xbox Publishing's 2025 lineup. And look, I'll give it to them, most of these were well received, but none of them are gangbuster sales. I mean, Call of Duty was, but it was one of the worst selling Call of Duties in a while. 3 of those games were made by Obsidian, somehow. Maybe their strategy to keep the studio alive is to have too many projects in development so Xbox can't shut them down. Oh yeah, layoffs. We got a few more of those and a couple more studio shutdowns. In July of 2025, 9,000 more employees got laid off across all of Microsoft. This included people from studios like Rare, who currently run the very successful, mind you, live service game Sea of Thieves. The layoffs in turn got their next game, Everwild, cancelled. Thanks for making one of our most successful live service games of the last generation. Fuck you, this is also what you're going to be doing forever. Sucks to be Rare, I guess. Turn 10 Studios, the people behind Forza Motorsport, lost half of their workforce. And yeah, look, the latest Motorsport game underperformed. And I'm sure the next Forza game is going to be great now. Turns out they were the lucky ones because the initiative, the development team behind the Perfect Dark reboot, got completely shut down. In turn, completely cancelling Perfect Dark, a game which was only just revealed in Xbox Summer Games Fest showcase in 2024. Perfect Dark was the showstopper reveal of that showcase. Just over a year later, the game is gone. Some other major publishers were in talks to try and save the game, like Take-Two Interactive, but talks eventually fell through due to who would take ownership over the IP and brand of Perfect Dark, a series which apparently Xbox doesn't want to get rid of, but simultaneously hasn't done anything with it since 2010. Xbox as a company only made $24 billion this year with an operating profit of somewhere near $4 billion. In gaming terms, that could fund the development of 400 Expedition 33s. But Xbox isn't going to do that. In fact, they aren't capable of that. Xbox has a severe management problem. And as they try and gobble up more studios to take that quick path to more profit, it's transparent that they have no idea on how to actually manage and quality check the projects they have under their banner. I want to remind everyone that Xbox's flagship IP, Halo, has been shit for longer than it has ever been good. Halo Infinite was meant to be a 10-year-long live service game, and it launched without critical features like Forge, or campaign co-op, or a steady amount of content to keep players engaged for longer than a couple of weeks. A game that had an entire new engine built around it to make, and then was turfed for Unreal 5 for their next project, which is going to be a remake of Halo 1 without the multiplayer. Halo Infinite received its final update on November 18th, marking the end of 4 years out of 10 of service the game was meant to have. And then there's Redfall, a game that was so heavily marketed you'd expect it to be the next big hit of the decade. I don't know how anyone didn't think that was going to be a catastrophe. And now Gears of War Reloaded, a remaster of a remaster, a game that somehow has shitty AI pathfinding, even though 90% of the game is a flat and linear series of rooms and hallways. Everything seems to be suffering under Microsoft and Xbox, and it can't be easy for the developers working on these games under the condition that their jobs could disappear at any moment, as soon as an accountant feels like moving a decimal place along a spreadsheet to boost revenue for the upcoming quarter. Even development teams with successful games under their belt can just get obliterated out of nowhere. Studios with decades of experience, one bad game and they get turfed. But it feels like a lot of really awesome projects and creativity could be allowed to blossom under this umbrella if it were nurtured, not neutered. Arcane Austin could have been saved and put to work on Dishonored 3 or something closer to their wheelhouse. But no, gone. The Game Pass, which was probably the one good thing Xbox had going for it, got fucked up this year as well. In October, the Game Pass split into 3 different categories, Core, Premium and Ultimate, with only the Ultimate tier giving access to new games on day one, which is a feature that the old cheap tier used to give, and now the Ultimate tier costs $30 a month, or $360 a year. A price hike Xbox tried to justify by the fact that they now have more games from more partners, as well as perks such as Fortnite Crew and benefits in League of Legends and EA Play and Ubisoft Classics Plus, whatever the fuck that is. It's true that Game Pass Ultimate is overloaded with features. Actually, you know what? I'm going to rephrase that. It is bloated. I cannot think of many, if any, people who would take advantage of all of those features. Still, if you're paying $30 a month and you're able to play, 6 AAA games in a year and you don't care about owning them, then the Game Pass is still technically worth it. It's not a bad deal, it's just a marginally worse one than the one we already had and liked. As part of Xbox's new multi-platform strategy, Xbox partnered with ROG to make the first ever Xbox handheld PC, and reviews for it were actually pretty decent. The price is pretty gnarly, but a lot of those handheld PCs are. And that's pretty much it for Xbox that I feel like talking about. It's pretty dire. With the amount of resources this company has, you think that they could and should be able to spin gold, but it shows that money can't fix all your problems. They seem more interested in their corporate strategies rather than actually making good video games. So yeah, fuck Xbox and fuck Gears of War Reloaded. What is this garbage? Okay. So before you get all of your pitchforks out, let me explain. This list is based on my enjoyment of these games, and it's hard to enjoy the game that you only played an hour of and then refunded. Yeah, so this is game number 2 of 3 this year that received the refund treatment. And it's probably not even fair to include Metal Gear Delta on this list because I barely played it and refunded it. But I played it for an hour, which is more than I played some of these games here, so I'm counting it. And including it in this video gives me an excuse to talk about a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a little while, that being the price of video games. So Metal Gear Triangle is the most expensive video game I've ever bought at a whopping 117 Australian dollars. This doesn't include special edition games and whatnot, but seriously, what the fuck? Why is a remake of a PlayStation 2 game the most expensive game that I've ever bought? That was the main reason why I ended up refunding the game. It has nothing to do with the overall quality of the game, although nothing I saw during the first hour or so gave me any reason to think that maybe I shouldn't refund it. But it is, kind of, a Kojima game, so having the majority of the first hour also be front-loaded with overly explained dialogue-heavy cutscenes is to be expected. Is this game amazing? Maybe, I don't know. And I'm never going to know unless it goes on sale for like 50% off or more, which still puts this around the $60 mark. Jesus. I just could not get over the hurdle of how much this game costs to buy, and that should never be a factor that looms over you as you play a game. I shouldn't have to be checking the clock every few minutes with the feeling of like, oh god, is it too late? Do I quit now or should I give it an extra 5 minutes? No, I'm doing okay financially, If I wasn't able to refund the game, then it wouldn't have been the end of the world for me, but I have never had a game make me feel like this before, and it wasn't a good feeling. The prices of everything is going up, and yeah, the cost to buy video games should go up as well. But video games are a different animal. Right now on Steam, you can buy about 7 extremely amazing games for about $15 each that could easily keep you occupied for a month, or even a year, depending on how much you like them. Does Metal Gear 3 Lines Connected Vertices really compete? I understand it's not a very valid argument, but when I see the prices of games go up, but the quality and scope don't also seem to be going up with it, it reminds me that, oh yeah, I can pay all of that money to a bunch of different things and be much happier than one single purchase. Also, why is one of the most expensive games out right now a remake? From what I understand, a lot of the game was already made. They didn't have to concept and work out the game from a design standpoint or write it. They just had to remake it and improve it for modern times, which from what little I understand about game development, sounds a lot easier than making something completely from scratch. So, while I don't think there is any clear line in the sand on this list on where I would or would not recommend any game, I did kind of recommend this game in my review of it earlier in the year, and I kind of regret it now. So as a content creator, sometimes I do get to play games before they are released. I am relatively new to this practice, so sometimes I'm not sure what parts of my experience may also be a part of the user experience. One such thing is bugs. You are often playing a version of the game with issues that may or may not be addressed in a day one patch. I've got to say that with Portal Fantasy, I was well out of my depth. And this is something I do talk about pretty extensively in my review. So this is the earliest I've been able to play a game before its actual launch so far. Roughly 2 weeks. But the version, or should I say versions, of the game I played were extremely buggy, filled with performance issues, and for some reason filled with blockers to stop main campaign progress. Stranger yet, the game had no embargo date set. So if I chose to do so, I could have streamed this game in one of the most broken and unfinished states I've ever seen a game be, or I could have dropped a review tearing it to shreds after playing it on day one. So I booted this game up almost every day for a couple of weeks, and every time things started to get too buggy, I would take a break and then come back tomorrow. Almost every time I would come back, something in the game was fixed and it would feel better and I would keep moving. Then for 2 whole days, the game just wouldn't launch properly. Then one time I managed to bypass one of the dev blockers and an accessed area I wasn't supposed to be in, almost completely bricked my save. For 2 weeks I was in this cycle of playing this game and probably experienced the worst possible state the game could have been in. And sometimes when you receive a key for a game, it will come with a guide or a list of known issues. And I would have thought that considering the game was seemingly getting tested and bug fixed daily, that maybe I would have been warned of this. No, I actually had to email the devs and ask what was going on, because I was about to go scorched earth on this game. Luckily, the dev I was emailing with was actually super communicative and answered all of my questions and even offered to fix my save file if it did end up getting bricked and corrupted by that blocker that I managed to bypass. So I chalked the whole thing up to maybe an experience by the developers on how to deal with marketing the game via reviewers and content creators. The game also had its release date delayed like 3 days before its initial release, and with it a complete change in monetization scheme from a free-to-play game with microtransactions to a premium title with no microtransactions. Bit of a strange pivot, and for it to happen so close to release and the delay only being 2 weeks, weird. There is also a free-to-play Web3 version of the game online somewhere that I found that had some kind of crypto integration. I don't know what the fuck was up with that. The Steam version doesn't seem to have any trace of that garbage. I mean, it was meant to have some kind of multiplayer integration, but I think that also got chucked out with the pivot in direction too. The whole experience was unconventional, so I did my best to review the game to the best of my ability and document my experience with the game. I've never experienced anything like this before, and I'm not sure it will ever happen again. I still don't know what to make of it. I realized that I haven't actually talked about the game so far. It's pretty bland. It's inoffensive. The biggest frustrations I had came mostly from the uniquely weird experience that I was having. Game balance was a bit whack. That's something I kind of remember. A lot of backtracking. I was on the fence with this game, leaning slightly positive when I reviewed it, but now I'm leaning negative. Because the only things I remember about the game had nothing to do with the game itself, and on further reflection, I wouldn't play it. I don't recommend you do either. There are plenty of other games out there that you can play instead, especially, creature collectors and creature battlers. So I don't actually have any footage of Fragpunk, and I didn't really care enough to reinstall it just for this video. So yay, a segment with a bunch of trailer footage. Fragpunk was okay. This game is a tactical shooter that had a mechanic in it to try and change it up every round where you and your team would vote on game modifiers, and that did a lot of weird and cool things. Something like making all of the enemies have big heads or giving your team the ability to plant bombs as attackers anywhere on the map. It's a bit like Valorant on crack. and from what little I played of it, I had fun, but there wasn't anything that made me feel like coming back, you know? Also, the game has one of the most confusing and egregious monetization systems I've ever seen in a game. I lost count of how many different currencies the game had. There were also allegations of AI-generated art being used throughout the game and in paid items in the store. I don't know if that was ever confirmed. The game doesn't have an AI disclosure on Steam, and the game was at the time high profile enough that I feel like Steam should have investigated, although I don't know if Steam actually does that when it comes to anything AI. But now might be a good time to segue into... It probably doesn't surprise anyone watching this video to know that I generally do not like AI. I'm not 100% against it. I do think that there are some positive use cases for AI, and there are certainly some interesting ways you can implement it into game development, which we'll talk about later with arc raiders, but for now I want to focus on the negative, which is how it's starting to really fuck up the games industry. Because like 2024, 2025 has been a fantastic year for games, really a shitty year for game developers, mostly because management at a lot of the big studios are laying people off and replacing them with AI, or mandating the use of AI in their work. Most of the problems with AI haven't trickled down to the consumers yet, but they will. I think the strategy of the big development studios dictating the use of AI is that they're going to keep mandating the use of AI into their products until they can do either one of a few things. AI becomes so good that people won't be able to tell if something is human created or not. Anno 117 famously earlier this year found out to have some major pieces of art created by generative AI left in the game. Oh, some AI placeholder art made it into the final product of the game and it was a mistake? You know, that's kind of weird because surely if you were going to use placeholder assets, then you would chuck a giant watermark on it, saying it's placeholder so it couldn't possibly make it into the final release of a game, right? I refuse to believe that a professional game studio wouldn't also watermark temp assets, is something that I had originally said until I did some research into it, and even games like Expedition 33 and The Alters had also done the same thing. Or you could take it a step further and just completely rip off someone's art like Bungie did with Marathon. And what the fuck happened to Bungie? Expedition 33 and The Alters did not and do not have generative AI disclaimers on their store page, by the way. These assets and translations have since been removed from the game, but I mean, Gen AI may not be present in the game, but it was used in development, which is something that people do want to know about, even if it was used to create something like a wall texture, which is something that devs usually just tend to buy off asset stores anyway. But still, watermarking temp assets feels like it should be a must, so that even if the asset somehow makes it into the game, people can see that it was left in as a mistake. But you'd also think that if you're going to use something temporary, it could be anything. The background text in The Alters literally could have been, quote, "I'm a placeholder," copy and pasted 1,000 times. And that would have been quicker to put in than asking ChatGPT to create a prompt. And the more scuffed the asset is, the less likely it's going to make it through to launch. I'm a fucking YouTuber with a $0 budget. Even I label shit that isn't finished. It's so unreal to me that this has happened a few times this year, but it makes you think, has any of this gone unnoticed? The other scenario is that studios find a way to blur the lines of ethical AI so much that nobody will care to point it out anymore. I.e. the, same strategy that got microtransactions popular. Someone has to take the outrage first, like with Oblivion and Horse Armor. Then down the line we get, oh, the game's free to play? So microtransactions are okay then. Oh, there's a battle pass? Well, I'll pay that because the game actually wasn't a fully priced AAA title. So I feel like I'm still getting my money's worth. Now people don't seem to care that a game that comes out yearly, which is essentially a subscription service now that I think about it, also comes with a bunch of premium battle passes that you can also pay for. And microtransactions. Now there's generative AI in Call of Duty and possibly cutscenes that feel like AI had a hand in helping create, as well as write. Or this could just be what happens to a game series that releases yearly 21 years in a row. Regardless, Microsoft has been mandating AI use in pretty much every development studio that they own. Tim Sweeney, for some reason, is mad at Valve because they force developers to disclose their use of AI in their games on the Steam store. And look, if you're so unashamed of your AI use, Tim, then why would you care if you have to disclose your use of it? Is it maybe because people who don't like generative AI and you want to see if you can get away with it without the backlash? I mean, he actually went and made his own PC game store with blackjack and, well, not hookers because Epic Games doesn't, allow porn games or anything on their store, but they do allow NFTs. I don't actually know why he cares so much about anything that Valve does. By the way, Tim, you should probably look more closely into the stuff you're allowing onto your store because obviously shady AI Copilot for Fortnite. Seriously, this looks like garbage. Is this the future that you want? I don't understand why it seems to be all of the biggest names in gaming that seem to be pushing for this. These are the companies that literally print money. They can afford to pay artists to create good art for them. I mean, it's bad enough that this shit seems to be seeping into the real world too. I'm starting to receive stock from suppliers at work that seem to have artwork made with generative AI. Hell, I was putting new stock on our retail system not too long ago and a button appeared called AI pricing. Mind you, this software already has an algorithm built into it that will already estimate the price of a product for you based on what category and subcategory of stock you put it into. I've never pressed the AI pricing button because the software already does a good enough job to begin with. AI is really the biggest case of mass enshittification I think the world has ever seen. Giant data centers dedicated to running AI modules that require insane amounts of power, raising power prices and poisoning the water of entire communities of people just so the richest man on earth can generate a picture for the saddest Twitter post of all time. Also, RAM and GPU prices are going to suck for the next few years, so thanks for that. I'm not even going to talk about the latest stuff that just started happening with Grok and the pictures it's been generating. That's a bit too much for this video and instant demonetization. Alright, I'm meant to be reviewing and ranking games. Yeah, no, I've definitely spent too much time in this. AI should not be a substitution for human creativity, and Fragpunk is a pretty mid game. RV There Yet is a game that I had to add at the very last minute, not because I played it so late in the year, but because I accidentally removed it from the list or I straight up forgot to add it to begin with. That's not a good sign. And it also ruined the nice round number of 60 games. Make no mistake, its spot on this list isn't here out of pure spite or anything. I think a lot of its placing on here is due to me not really feeling the greatest while playing it. It was a late night. My friends were certainly enjoying it more than I was, but I was fucking tired. I couldn't really get into the game and I almost fell asleep twice while playing it, which I can't say that I've ever really done before in a game, but okay. So after about an hour and a half of playing, we got to a save spot and I just called it there and we haven't played since. RV There Yet somehow won the award for the Sit Back and Relax award on the Steam Awards. I know you can, sit in an RV and smoke ciggies with the boys, but this isn't exactly a relaxing game. It's like infuriating and stressful. Wait, did anyone actually play the game or did everyone just sit around punching darts? The Headliners is a co-op horror game. It's basically Lethal Company with the Dead Rising camera mechanic added to it. I would explain further, but that's pretty much covers what the game is. You go in, you take pictures of some fucked up shit and then leave without dying. It's a fun premise that the game just isn't quite able to take full advantage of. It was a little repetitive, there weren't many maps when my friends and I played, and the camera system didn't feel like it worked correctly. I feel like the game should have been labeled early access because it sure didn't feel like a fully fledged out experience. That being said, it's fun for what it is and you should be able to get an afternoon or two of entertainment out of it, or at least until you work out how the point system works and the game becomes too formulaic. The game is still actively being worked on with major updates coming out every couple of months or so I do like that the developers aren't done with the game. I'm not sure if there's anything else to say with this one. It's fun with friends, and it's a pretty cheap game.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Wait, anyone want to film? Take a picture while in the helicopter.
Got 4 shots left. Is it worth it? Or just go?
Yeah, just snap some. We got 3 minutes anyways. Just go.
Oh my god. Hyper Light Breaker is a third-person action game made by Heart Machine, the team behind Hyper Light Drifter and Solar Ash, 2 brilliant games that rank among my all-time favourites. So to say expectations were high going into this is a bit of an understatement. Hyper Light Breaker came out the same week as another game that I was really excited for, and the other game was the one that I ended up reviewing over this one. The plan was to do both, but the scale of the other game ended up being too much. But I did take a break for an hour to try Hyper Light Breaker, and it sucked. The biggest problem was probably the performance, which made for a very unpleasant first hour, so I made the decision to bench this game, give it some time as it is early access, and see how it goes a few weeks or maybe months down the line. It's a can that I kicked down the road all the way down to October. And that was when I heard the news that Heart Machine were laying off developers and that come January or 2026, they will be delivering a final update to Hyper Light Breaker and ending support for the game. The news was a little surprising because the game was in a pretty lousy state at launch and I thought that it would take a while to fix the game. So in light of that news, I tried Hyper Light Breaker again, and you know what? The game is pretty mid. It's an okay, middle-of-the-road roguelike. But for a game developed by Heart Machine, that's not what I wanted. Also, I have a much better PC now than I did in January, and this game still runs like dog shit. I have little faith that whatever this final update for the game is going to be, will be the game in a finished state. Actually, hold up 1 second because we are not done. Because on the 22nd of December, we got an update saying that Hyper Light Breaker will not be receiving further development for the time being. Huh? Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, so what happened here? Short answer, we don't really know. The entire team that was working on Hyper Light Breaker was laid off. That's all we know, which is probably why this death announcement was signed by the Arc Games team and not the Heart Machine team. Hyper Light Breaker was made in collaboration with Gearbox Publishing, then rebranded to Arc Games when Gearbox got acquired by Embracer Group, but as of the 1st of December, Arc Games is independent of both Embracer and Gearbox. I'm guessing the whole Breaker team was under Arc Games management because Heart Machine released a second game this year called Possessors, which I have not played yet and I kind of don't want to anymore. But on the Heart Machine side, things have been radio silent. All we really have to go off of here is that Arc Games is independent now, which when studios separate from their corporate overlords, usually costs a bit of money to do. Maybe they can't afford to keep development going, but putting the game on sale during the same time as announcing the game will be incomplete indefinitely is certainly a thing that you can do as a publisher. So I actually came across this news about 10 PM on Christmas Eve, and yeah, I guess Merry fucking Christmas to me. And I think of any piece of gaming news this year, of all of the disappointments, this one hit me the hardest. I mean, it's also the most fresh. I am mad, I'm disappointed, I'm sad, I want answers. How come the game's development couldn't be sustained for a full year of early access development? What the fuck happened? Were the game sales really that bad? How come we were promised a final update that never happened? Information is sparse, so, I'll update this if anything comes down the line before this video comes out. And maybe by then I've calmed down a bit, and if not, then this game will be much lower than number 50 on the list. This game actually will be getting an award, but before I do give it out, I need to explain to you all what the Bungie effect is. The Bungie effect is named after Bungie, a friend of mine that has appeared on the channel many times over the years.
Fuck Egypt. I don't want to go to Egypt anyway, it's too fucking hot. Bunch of fucking sand with some fucking blocks stacked up like fucking preschoolers. I don't give a fuck.
Bungie has the ability to believe in the hype of upcoming games like they're the next coming of Christ, only for the games to come out and they be either absolute dumpster fires or, for whatever reason, completely forgotten about before the week is over. See Wildstar as an example. But this has happened enough times that we coined the term, the Bungie effect. Now, I was originally going to give this award out independently of my list to the game that Bungie himself, Bungie affected the most this year. But to his credit, he's actually been pretty good. Battlefield 6 was probably the game he was hyping up the most, and it actually turned out to be pretty decent. For the general population, not for me, but we'll get to that shortly. Instead, I'm going to give out the Bungie Effect award to the game that I myself did a Bungie Effect on, which was Hyper Light Breaker. Because I, many times, due to my love of Hyper Light Breaker and Soul Ash, hyped up this game. I even did it on my channel, only for the game to come out and nothing. No review, no video, no recommendations to my friends to buy it and try this co-op roguelike with me, nada. I think the abandonment of development on this game, as well as my abandonment after hyping it up, makes it the perfect recipient for the Bungie effect. Alright, I know what you're thinking. Battlefield 6, this low? Wasn't it one of the best multiplayer games of the year? Yeah, probably. That's not what I experienced though. So welcome to my third and final refunded game of the year. Let me tell you the story of my experience playing Battlefield 6. I was actually kind of excited for this one. A lot of my friends got it, so I thought I would too, because this game is a good time with friends. So let me give you a timeline of what my Battlefield experience was. Launched the game, it works, cool. Joined my friends through a party. The game freezes on the loading screen because the game ended when I was joining and the match was moving over to a new map, and it didn't want to bring me along. Alt F4, Try again. This time I load into the game and it works. It puts me into a squad of random people, despite the fact that the squad with my friends in it was open and had space. I finally joined my friend's squad, play the game for a bit. It's running noticeably worse than it was during the beta. Netcode is doing a bit of funky shit, and after a while I notice I'm no longer in my friend's squad, and I've been dragged back into the same squad of random people when I got into the map. I open up the menu to try and join back into my friend's squad and the game crashes. I rejoined the game and now the game is being super funky. Instead of some netcode issues, the game is all netcode issues. The game starts running worse than before, and now there's a delay on my inputs and moving around starts to feel weird. I try to turn down the graphics settings to see if that helps. This requires me to leave the game and rejoin for the graphics settings to take effect. I do that, and despite being gone less than 20 seconds, the game is full and I have to wait in queue to join. I get in, I'm not in my friend's squad again, the game is unplayable, I quit and I refund the game. As of writing, the game is sitting at an 81% positive rating on Steam, so I'm pretty sure whatever happened here to me was uncommon, or at the very least I got super unlucky with just a bunch of issues at once. I only played the game for half an hour, probably, if you can call that playing the game. And I could have tried to spend some time to try and fix it, but the thing that was running through my head the entire time while I was experiencing this shit was that I just wanted to be playing literally anything else. I couldn't be fucked troubleshooting. I don't want to miss out on the refund window, especially with how pricey the game is. It's not worth it when I could be having a much better time playing literally any of the other games above this one on the list. So yeah, Battlefield 6. I'm genuinely starting to believe that EA have me on a list or something and they're just like fucking with me intentionally. Either that or I'm straight up cursed, because I have never been able to play a Battlefield game on launch without some kind of random severe issue that nobody else seems to have. I should have seen it coming. Now you may be thinking, wow, this game is pretty high for an experience that sounded nothing but awful. And yes, it should have been lower. In fact, Battlefield 6 used to be third from the bottom in this list, and that was until the free-to-play Battle Royale game mode came out. So Battlefield RedSec came out and Bungie, of all people, hit me up to try and play it, so I reluctantly reinstalled the free-to-play version of Battlefield 6, which is just a Battle Royale mode plus some other little arcadey Battlefield Lite modes to help you with weapon progression and stuff. And I had an okay time. I think I played about 3 hours of it, and I had a bit of fun and then never played it again. I did crash loading into my first game, but after that it was actually smooth sailing. So I don't have that much to add in terms of criticism. The game seemed fine, which was enough to bump it up this far in the list. I know a lot of people who own Battlefield 6 seem to really hate RedSec for some reason. I don't know what that's about. I don't care. I'm not buying Battlefield 6 again. So I would classify this next batch of games that we're going to be looking at as games that I think are good but didn't personally vibe with. And starting that off is Wheel World, a game that I previewed in my Steam Next Fest video when I played the demo for it, which I thought was pretty good, and then I played the game, which I thought was pretty good up until I passed the point I reached in the demo. Then I started to think it was much less good. Part of the game's progression system is upgrading your bike. It's supposed to be slow and clunky to begin with, and it will get better as the game goes on when you add new parts and tinker around with the system a bit more. What I wasn't expecting was how much this control style would clash with the world design so much. I found navigating the world to just suck a little. I mean, take my opinions with a grain of salt because I didn't really give this one much of a fair shot. Rift of the Necrodancer is a rhythm game. It sports a fantastic art style, a fun story, great presentation. I just found the gameplay to be a little boring. It's a Guitar Hero type of gameplay style where you are battling monsters and the monsters are the beats of the song. It's a relatively simple concept that the game is able to stretch to a fairly impressive degree, but at the same time, it's a game where you're really just pressing 3 buttons for the most part, and I wasn't really having fun with it. The music was okay, I wasn't really feeling it, which does make it harder to engage with a rhythm game. I felt like I was more attacking the notes with visuals rather than trying to feel the rhythm of each individual song. Look, the game is a 95% positive on Steam, so what the fuck do I know? Blueprints is what I would call a very interesting and uniquely designed game. Good atmosphere, fantastic music, but it is frustrating to play and very tedious. Blueprints is not a bad game. In fact, I think it's a great game. It's a niche game that isn't for everyone, but I think the people within that niche will absolutely freaking love it. I could see the appeal, but personally it wasn't for me. And I honestly feel bad about putting the game here because I understand the uniqueness of this game and the quality of most of the design of the game, but personally, not for me. My main problem with this game is also what makes it so unique, and that is the roguelike elements. So let me explain what this game is real quick. Blueprints is a puzzle escape room type of game, but it's a roguelike. Every run you enter a mansion with the objective of reaching the end of a certain room at the end of the mansion, but the mansion's layout changes every run. Every time you enter a doorway, you have the ability to draft one of a few choices of a room to basically make your own maze to the end. The two main things that will end your run is one, energy. Every time you enter a room, it takes away your energy, so you can't, kind of move back and forth throughout the mansion freely without being kind of punished for it. The second way is to essentially soft yourself by your choice of room placement. This is the part of the game that really frustrated me. There are certainly ways to combat the RNG of the game, but goddamn did it feel like a lot of my runs where I felt like I was making a lot of good progress in the game would get stonewalled by bad RNG, and it is a momentum killer. What I love about the game is the puzzles in most of the rooms and how a lot of them interconnect with each other. The game shows you a lot of puzzles that don't become relevant to much later in the game. And I can see why Blueprints wants you to have a notepad handy, because you really do need it to keep track of all the things you learn, puzzle codes, combinations, even like optimal way to draft room placements. I feel like I'm decent at puzzle solving, but I'm shit at figuring out room drafting and working through the monotony of that part of the game. Yeah, I just didn't like the tedium of having to go through and redo a bunch of puzzles I already knew the answers to just to get fucked over by a shitty RNG room draft. I don't think there is any other game like Blueprints out there. From a concept level, the game is impressive. Execution isn't to my liking, but I really do see why people love it, and I do think it is worth a shot if puzzle games are your jam, but you have to have a pretty good aptitude for not getting discouraged by repeated failure. More so than the regular roguelike. I definitely feel like I'm going to catch some heat for this one. I didn't care that much for 2XKO. 2XKO is the 2D tag fighter League of Legends game that I was decently excited for. I like tag fighters, and Tekken Tag 2 is one of my favourite fighting games of all time, and I was keen to see what, a League of Legends tag fighter would look like. Turns out the reason I like Tekken Tag 2 so much is because of the fighting system of Tekken, more than the fact that it was a tag in fighting game. Which sucks because I really love the League characters and lore, to be more specific, one character and their lore. Hey, check it out everyone, I got a new one. For some reason it needs a USB-C to light up and then separately a battery to light up another part of it. I think the contact's a bit dodgy. Actually, this whole thing is a bit flimsy. I probably double checked that I put this thing together right. Also, when I was playing 2XKO, I was mashing buttons so hard that I bruised my thumb while playing it. I don't know if this is a sign that I was, getting really into the game, or that I'm just a really soft human being. I mean, I played over 60 video games this year. Do you really think that I have time for like gym or muscles or eating good? Nah, fuck that. I have games to play. Games like RuneScape Dragon Wilds. If I told you this year that a survival game came out based on RuneScape, I bet I'm going to get two reactions. First being, there's a RuneScape survival game. Second being, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. I didn't actually mind what I played of RuneScape Dragon Wilds. The idea of bringing in RuneScape DNA into a survival crafting game was an interesting idea, and it's pretty solid. But technical issues really play a part in its placement here. This game struggled to run a bit on my machine at the time, and I also had the issue of the game's lighting being so bright it actually hurt to look at whenever the sun was up in the game. Bloom is an issue, and I don't know if it still continues to be. I have not gone back to check. Like I said before, I play a shit ton of video games, especially in the last year, and it's very rare that a game will give me a headache. But something about this game, my retinas and brain just disagreed with. I'd be more than willing to give it another shot when it's fixed, because when the game was in nighttime mode, I actually did enjoy what I was playing, and I did want to play more. You know what I actually enjoyed more than Dragon Wilds? Apart from every other game after this on the list. The new old school RuneScape skill, Sailing. I came back to RuneScape after a 5-year hiatus, just so I could try the skill day one. And actually minute one. Sailing is a lot of fun, or as fun as a new skill in old school RuneScape can be. But it reminded me of how much fun the community of this game can be, especially when there's a big event going on. This part isn't really going anywhere, I liked it. Oh, there's also Gillenor Games, Season 5 is currently airing. I don't know if you've heard of it. As I'm writing this part of the script, the newest episode was actually sponsored by RuneScape Dragon Wilds, which is a bit of a strange coincidence. Anyway, Gillenor Games is a game show with prolific old school RuneScape creators that functions a little bit kind of like Survivor. It has a surprisingly high production value for an internet show based on a 20-year-old MMO, but it's got fun challenges, it's got good social intrigue, backstabbing, and a really fun cast. It is some of my favorite content on all of YouTube, and that is saying a lot because I watch shit ton of YouTube as well. Season 3 is my favorite. Season 4 is pretty good, but so far the current season could end up being my favorite depending on how the whole thing shakes out. So to bring this all back around to the game I was actually meant to be talking about, I do have an award for RuneScape Dragon Wilds, and that is the What Year Is It award. This award is given to the game that seriously makes me forget what year it is. It's not exactly a bad award to get, but funnily enough, I gave it to the RuneScape inspired game Brighter Shores last year. RuneScape Dragon Wilds would get the What Year Is It award for just being yet another early access survival game being released in the year 2025, a year where people are well and truly aware of and sick of these games. But it also being based on a 25 or something year old MMO is such a bewildering decision. RuneScape early access survival game. What year is it? Have you ever played Persona 5 and thought, wow, that game was absolutely amazing. I wish I could play a version of that that was marginally worse with gacha mechanics bolted onto it. Well, have I got the game for you. Persona 5 The Phantom X is a mobile gacha version of Persona 5. Granted, it does have its own parallel story to tell with its own cast of characters that are all much less interesting than the original. You only need to look as far as the first villain of the game to notice the downgrade. Instead of an extremely physically abusive gym teacher that preys on students in multiple sickening ways, we have a dude that really likes to shoulder check people at the subway. I mean, there is more to shoulder check man, but the inciting incident that turns him from just a little bit of a menace to an actual threat is so unbelievably goofy that I can't take it seriously. Whereas in Persona 5, the inciting incident is so well set up that anyone that had any possible moral quandary with what could happen if something went wrong with a mission against the first antagonist where you could accidentally kill a man is thrown away. Man, Persona 5 is such a fucking good game. Royal is better, Phantom X is worse. The gacha system spoils character reveals in the story, and while the game does warn you that it may happen if you do that, you're kind of expected to start engaging with that system regardless if you want to like start progressing through the game at a decent rate. That being said, a worse version of Persona 5 is still a version of Persona 5. The slick style, the fun combat, the great music, it's all here. It just kind of sucks more than the version we already had. What if Dynasty Warriors was a top-down roguelike? Well, then you get Warriors Abyss. It's fine. It's not going to blow your socks off. It's a fun way to convert Warriors-style gameplay into a different genre of game. The game is kind of an asset flip with all of the models, splash art, and stuff seems to be reused from Warriors games like Dynasty Warriors 8 and some like the Samurai Warriors games and stuff like that are all almost like 10 years old at this point. I think it was an interesting enough experiment. The UI and general art style is pretty shit, but the gameplay is pretty solid and the build system is kind of fun to tinker around with. As a small project that was made by a smaller team and more or less shadow dropped, it's not bad. I do feel like this is a get on sale type of deal, and I did make a video review about it if you want to know more. Karma the Dark World is a game that is a little difficult to describe. It's a walking sim game disguised as a horror game. I wish it were a little more horror than walking sim because the visuals and the set pieces are all fantastically designed, if a little nonsensical. Karma is a mess of ideas, which makes sense because the devs are inspired by Hideo Kojima, a man who, even at his best, has some very questionable design or story decisions. And I'm saying that as someone who mostly enjoys Hideo Kojima games. Karma the Dark World feels very Kojima inspired, in the same way that Fortnite is inspired by the movie Battle Royale. Like, they were inspired by it, but they didn't fully understand it or care enough to understand it. And what we get with Karma is a game with a bit of a nonsensical plot that is just batshit insane. The batshit insane stuff makes this game a hell of a ride, and there is a decent amount of production quality to the game. And I think I would have liked it a hell of a lot more if there was more to the game than just slow walking everywhere and experiencing just the one thing that they want you to see. The story doesn't have a whole lot to grapple onto to keep me interested. A lot of it just felt like loosely connected psychedelic trips, which I mean, at least there is some creativity to that, but just not a whole lot of substance to take in. Starvaders is a game that I desperately wanted to like more than I did. It's a card-based roguelike, it's got a slick battle system, cool art, and an overwhelmingly positive reception on Steam, and sometimes you just don't click with games that you think are going to be right up your alley. In the case of Starvaders, it was the battle system. I was a bit meh on. I've never been a fan of games with, the semi-RNG card-based systems, although the exception to that rule is that one card-based game from last year that I thought was pretty good. I mean, even with games like Midnight Suns, for example, I think the card-based parts of the battle system is the worst part about a game that I generally like. There's a reason why, even though I'm an avid fan of roguelikes, I've never touched a game like Slay the Spire. It's a deck-building roguelike, and I think if that's your jam, you're probably going to like it. It's not my jam, and that's probably why it never really stuck with me. Starvaders has a lot to like about it, but I personally wasn't enjoying the gameplay enough to experience all the game had for me. Seriously though, 98% positive in Steam is a pretty good achievement for a game that is still in early access. Repo is another co-op horror Lethal Company-like game. The hook here is that there is a physics engine to the loot that you have to take, and it is all damageable and breakable. While there are a lot of funny things that this game does, from enemies and items messing with the voice chat, or having certain items to your crew being cursed, making it harder to extract with, a lot of the game design can feel straight up unfair or not working as intended. Items feel like they break too easily from lightly touching a wall, while other times it feels like you can drop shit and it just does nothing, and you get lucky. Enemies can have pathing that make it feel impossible to get past them without dying. So many enemies insta-kill you, and the penalty for death means watching your more cautious friends who watched you die for long periods of time, playing the game with nothing to do while you wait. It's a major problem this genre of games has that Repo hasn't been able to solve. If you make a mistake or die, that also compounds on the runs because you need to spend money on health packs that may have been used to get better upgrades. It's a pretty punishing system for a game that is meant to be just kind of like fun with friends. The game's strength is the small moments of chaos that the game is able to bring down on you, which can make for a very fun time, but it is more fleeting than consistent fun.
Boys, that's $7 grand.
Oh, yeah, no, yes. Bro, your pupils are all dilated. What the
Let me get some of that.
Baby Steps is a game about walking when walking isn't exactly easy. It's an open world exploration game where you fall on your face a lot. The game has a wickedly funny sense of humor and is probably the crowning achievement of the game. The gameplay, on the other hand, is a bit of hit or miss. I think the difficult walking gameplay is fine, the physics are good, but the whole open world and exploration isn't really to my taste. There are a few times where I would go off the beaten path thinking I'd find something only to find nothing. There's a bit too much open-endedness for me. I like the base controls, they're fun, but not fun enough to sustain the amount of exploration the game can offer. For me anyway. I played a lot of games this year, and the drawback of having so many choices of games to play is that I feel like if a game is wasting my time, then it's very easy for me to drop it and just go for another game. And that's what I feel like this game was doing. I'm not saying that it is a waste of time, but I felt like I wasn't valuing my time while playing it, if that makes sense. I love the dialogue and the banter in the game, but when I was getting long stretches of nothing happening or not even knowing if I was going the right way to get more of the stuff that I liked, I was starting to get a bit frustrated. It's a little funny to me that the supposedly frustrating game controls weren't what was frustrating about the game. Lost in Random is another one of those games that I played the demo for during Steam Next Fest. I liked the game initially, then went on to the full thing, and then not so much. The game is fine, it's tightly designed, has a great voice cast, an interesting enough build crafting system for a roguelike, but no part of the game ever really stood out to me. Lost in Random is an extremely competent game, but it didn't excel in anything. I have a video if you want to know more, but the gist of it is just that. I didn't see anything wrong with it, it's decently fun enough, but the game doesn't have any staying power. It's hard to criticize a game that is technically, and actually is, very competent, and there isn't many things that I could actually fault with the game at the end of the day. It's just a game that I feel like I should have really liked, but only liked a little bit. Okay, I know I'm definitely catching some shit for this one. If you somehow never heard of Mega Bonk, it's basically, what if Risk of Rain 2 was a Vampire Survivors clone? Mega Bonk is what I would call a perfectly fine game that is just not my cup of tea. Again, we're still on this not my cup of tea segment. I've never really liked any type of Survivors game that I've played. I don't know why I thought this would be any different. I do think this is probably one of my favorite games in this genre, but that's mostly because of the resemblance to Risk of Rain, more than that of like a Survivors genre game. The game has a very fun sense of humor, and the movement tech is very cool to play around with. Also, what's not to love about a skeleton rolling around on a skateboard? I found it a good game to play while only kind of like half paying attention to it while I was like watching some TV on in the background. I found the way to unlock new levels was a little weird. I don't know if I missed any explanations for it. I felt like I was the dumbest motherfucker because I had no idea why I kept getting mega swarmed and dying instead of teleporting to the next level, even though like the boss, you go to the portal to activate the boss like in Risk of Rain 2. It's super strange. I don't know why it's like this. Stick It to the Stickman is a physics-based stickman beat-em-up focused on making fun of capitalism and corporate culture. It was my go-to Steam Deck game for this year. It's got a simple control scheme that mostly boils down to button mashing. The game is very cheap and has a surprising amount of content in it and a pretty fun difficulty scale. It takes an extremely simple concept and just runs an absolute mile with it. It's goofy, it's fun, it's pretty cheap to pick up, fine on handheld. If you're pining for those old Flash Stickman games back in the day, I think this will be up your alley. Apart from reminding us of the horrors of late-stage capitalism, it's a good, low brain effort escape from reality for a little while, and I enjoyed what I played of it for the most part. Aethermancer is another game that I picked up after playing the demo on Steam Next Fest, which so far the track record hasn't been amazing. It's a creature collector roguelike, which is a fairly unique premise. It's got a decent combat system except for one thing that I'll touch on in a minute, and a fantastic art style. I like the creature designs and the battle UI is great. It launched into early access earlier this year and checks a lot of boxes it needs to. And it's a pretty competent and fun game. There were two major things that I did dislike about it. First thing, which was a mechanic that I really hated, called the corruption mechanic, which whenever one of your monsters took a bit of damage in a fight, it would give them a stack of corruption, which would lower the max health of one of your monsters. For the most part, corruption is unremovable, except in some rare circumstances. Now, the reason I say was, and I'm referring to the mechanic in the past tense, isn't because the mechanic was removed, but because it's now toggleable as a part of an accessibility option, which thank fucking God. Now, I haven't played the game since the patch was put in, but I reckon I will pick this up again sometime soon. So, thank you very much, developers. This was really one of my major sticking points as to why I didn't like this game, because the mechanic ended most of my runs, and building up a team with a great synergy always felt like a waste, and they'd all get just corruption fucked. On to my other main gripe, which was the second major thing that I didn't like about this game, is that the runs are very long. Tediousness comes with the territory of roguelikes, but doing a run on this game felt like a big commitment. Runs go on for pretty long, and the beginnings of each run felt too tedious enough to be fun to replay. A sign of a good roguelike is, the just one more mentality after finishing a run. Whenever I finished a run in Aethermancer, the exit button was always the most appealing button. Again, most of my runs ended due to corruption, which was frustrating, and now knowing that it's a game mechanic I don't have to engage with if I don't want to, there's no way the run length is as much of a negative factor as it used to be. And also, the devs added a patch which added game speed options, so I don't really have much to complain about anymore. That's good early access development for you, and I probably should really play this game sometime soon. Mycopunk is a super weird video game. It's like Risk of Rain mixed with Helldivers, but if all of the enemies were very abstract aliens with super long legs with a weird floaty physics system. I haven't played much of this one. A friend and I got it while we were bored one night, played it once for about 3 hours or something, and then never again. It's not like we had a bad time playing it, it's just more that we had other things that we enjoyed playing more. So yeah, we played it for a bit, then never picked it back up. The hub area has a go-kart track. That's kind of cool. I don't know if we were playing the game wrong, or maybe we just got unlucky with objectives or enemies, I don't know, but I wasn't really picking up on why this game was getting such a great reception. It was fine. It feels like the game is missing something, or maybe I was missing something from it. The enemy design was a little weird, and I kind of dug that. This is another game I feel like I should give another go sometime soon. So the guys from Viva La Dirt League have a video game. Yeah, the people that do sketch comedy about games. You know what? It's alright. If you are looking for a fun, observational, self-aware comedy game, Nice Day for Fishing is kind of like that for the first 30 minutes, and then the whole game starts to become a bit of a fetch quest grind. A lot of running back and forth and a lot of fishing. Luckily, the fishing part of the game is pretty solid. I like the gameplay mechanics behind it, and it carried the game for me for a while. The quests themselves and the progression are a bit wonky, and the story loses steam pretty quickly. And it is by no means a bad game, it's just a little one note. I like Viva La Dirt League, but this seems like a game that if they didn't have their name on it, they'd probably parody it in one of their sketches. I know they probably didn't have too much input into the game themselves and most likely commissioned it. Still, their faces are on the store page, and it is a game filled with some pretty bad gaming cliches. That being said, I came out of this game more positive than negative. It's a good mid-tier game that I would feel like is worth picking up on a sale. Toll Trails is an adventure platformer game where you play as a little golem boy who gets about by sticking assorted things in his boot and shooting them out of the boot to jump around. I know this looks like a game that would probably be handed in as a uni assignment, and it almost kind of feels like one to play, The catch with the game is that every different thing that you stick in your boot actually does something different. Like some items let you jump high, some let you float, some do other weird shit. It's a game about 4 hours long, and it knows exactly how long the premise can be stretched and then stops before it can get old. It's rare for a game to know exactly how long it needs to be. It probably could have gone on a little bit longer, but I reckon it would have risked the game getting old. Tall Trails is a game that doesn't aim to be much, but at the same time it doesn't really fail at what it sets out to do. In my review of the game earlier this year, the main highlight of the game was that sometimes games are way too quick to add complexities to their game before getting the simple stuff right. And Tall Trails is a game that is just the simple stuff done right. It's refreshing to play a game like that, and also the soundtrack punches way above its weight for a small little game like this. I'd give it a listen, it's pretty good. Also, maybe just play the game as well. Is This Seat Taken is a little puzzle game where the objective of the game is to find a seat for a bunch of different shaped people who have some very specific demands. I talked about this game briefly in my Steam Next Fest video, and I'm glad to announce that the full game was pretty good. I didn't realize this, but this is like the simple premise but done well block of the video. Yeah, it's a simple premise and it delivers on that premise very well. Unfortunately, I never got a full explanation on why so many of these shape people just don't shower. Its depictions of inconsiderate people in public feel a little too real at the end of the day. Look, there isn't really much to say about Is This Seat Taken. It's a great puzzle game. You'll get around 5 hours, give or take, out of it. Like Tall Trails, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it doesn't feel short enough that you don't feel like you're getting your money's worth. It's pretty cozy and costs about $15. I think if you like simple logic games, then it's totally worth playing. At what point do you feel like a series has truly gone off the rails? It's strange because you feel like a pirate-themed Yakuza game do the trick. When this game got announced, people were like, hell yeah, I'd play a Majima Pirate Yakuza game. That sounds sick. And it is indeed sick. So why does the Pirate Yakuza game have some of the best ship combat I've played in any game? I don't know, it just does. Why is there an extended Disney-esque musical sequence at the start of the game?
Heave-ho, off we go, on our ship to waters unknown. Welcome aboard, there's no stopping us now that we're chasing after our dreams.
I don't know, it's just there. Yakuza as a franchise just does things and it seems to work, as long as we aren't counting TV shows. But as far as games go, this is another Yakuza game. It took a bit of a wild swing and it worked, for the most part. I think most people have figured out by now that Yakuza is more or less just a soap opera at this point. A lot of the story structures and plot points get recycled over and over. This game, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back, where I'm really starting to feel the story really getting to me. Despite taking Majima and putting him in an environment with pirates, the Yakuza series just can't shake the rigid Yakuza way of storytelling. The main map this time around is Hawaii, again, which is super disappointing. Yakuza as a franchise isn't new to reusing assets and environments between games, but not much has really been done to Hawaii since Infinite Wealth. I thought Hawaii would have been a cool one and done location. I didn't really want to come back. Look, a lot of the pirate stuff is cool, but the game feels very slim on the side content, and in particular side content that hasn't been seen or done before. Like, are we seriously doing the crazy taxi style food delivery game for the third game in a row? And I wouldn't mind so much if there were improvements to the minigame, but for the most part there aren't. And how much can you realistically improve a lot of these things when the last game was only a year ago in the series? I mean, I still like the Yakuza series, sorry, Like a Dragon series. I'm still going to call it Yakuza to keep it brief. But Yakuza doesn't need to become a yearly release franchise like Call of Duty. You know, I'm starting to feel the fatigue. We had 2 games in 2023 with Ishin and Like a Dragon Gaiden, and then another one in 2024 with Infinite Wealth, and Pirate Yakuza this year, plus the director's cut of Yakuza 0, and there's going to be Kiwami 3, plus a spin-off game bundled with it called Dark Ties coming out in about a month or so. I'm feeling burnt out. I just like, RGG to slow down a little bit after this. The gaming output from this studio already is unreal. I don't want to see it become just washed. With this game, the pirate stuff is fun, the combat is fun, the story is inconsequential. I think it's a fine game, but the price tag is a bit steep considering the amount of recycled content. If you haven't played it already, then I would suggest you buy it on a sale. Persona is a series that has inspired many RPGs during the current generation of games. Bloomtown last year was very notably Persona inspired. Expedition 33, which we are yet to talk about, is also very Persona inspired. But we also have Demon School. Demon School is a retro-inspired party RPG, and it was actually quick to grow on me. From the instant the game started, I really started to like it. The vibes right away were on point. The dialogue was a little in your face to start with, but the game didn't hesitate to just kind of suck me in. The problem with Demon School is that the game came out too late, and I haven't had much of a chance to play it. It was one of the games that pushed itself out of the way for Silksong, and in turn putting itself towards the end of the year. Due to making this video, all of the Christmas stuff and work that happens in December made it very hard to find time to sink my teeth into the game, which is unfortunate because I do think this game would rank much higher if I just had the chance to play it just a little bit more. Alas, this is where it ends up. It's probably not fair, but this is the best I can give it for now. But I will be catching up with it over the new year when this video is done and I have free time again. Fantasy Life I, the game with too long a name, is a game that is one part cozy life sim and one part fantasy adventure. The fusion between these two genres is what makes it the most interesting, because not a lot of games that are cozy in nature are willing to put a decent amount of combat in their game. But I think the trick to making combat in a cozy game work is to just not make the combat that intricate, or really make anything that intricate. Fantasy Life I is a game that dabbles in doing a lot of things. The game has this system called the life system, which is just skills. They're skills. I don't know why we have to call it something different. These can be split into 3 categories: combat, gathering, and processing. There are 4 combat skills, a mage one, a range one, and 2 melee ones, and apart from the melee ones, they all play fairly differently. Combat in general is fine, if a bit sluggish. There isn't a whole lot of depth to it, but I think because it is a bit simple, it does fit into that cozy style that the game is aiming for. Apart from the bosses, there aren't really many enemies that have any crazy mechanics you have to learn. I mean, even the bosses don't really have that much going on, but they are harder and they have attacks that you do need to dodge and block. But even then, you can pretty much just brute force any encounter with enough potions if you ever feel like turning your brain on. The other skill groups, the gathering and processing skills, are more straightforward. You have woodcutting, mining, fishing, and farming, which are all gathering skills. They pretty much only exist for you to be able to gather materials to do the processing skills. The gathering skills all play the same. You go up to a resource node, you do a quick time event, done. The processing skills all require you to go to an equivalent skill bench, do a minigame, which is just a bunch of quick time prompts to make things. This game is basically chibi RuneScape with a little bit more active gameplay. Like, I'm not even joking. This game has a lot to do. You can build your own town, there is a giant open world map to explore with a bunch of completionist stuff to do and find. A pretty good amount of content to do in the end game. They just released a free DLC roguelike game mode a couple of weeks ago apparently. Like, okay. Obviously, it has to be somewhat decent. I was able to dump 30 hours into the game in 3 days with no problem. It probably would have been more if I didn't have work. The biggest barrier to entry that stops me from recommending this game is definitely the price. It's weird because I don't think the game has overvalued itself. Like I keep saying, there is a ton of content in the game. People who like cozy games and like making their own town and customizing it, spending hours collecting and making things will absolutely get their money's worth out of it. And I could easily see people like spending hundreds of hours doing everything that this game has to offer. On the other hand, if you've come to this game not wanting to fully engage with all the content and do the bare minimum, you probably won't get your money's worth out of the game. I think a better way to put it is, I think Stardew Valley is a game that you get your money's worth if the only thing that you do in that game is you complete the story. But on top of that, there is so much else you can do if you want to engage with other things in that game. But if you come into Fantasy Life, the girl who did something to time, I don't remember what the title of this game is called, and then just do the bare minimum, complete the story, then I don't think you'll get your money's worth out of it. I mean, I don't know many people who would go into like a cozy farm life sim kind of game with the sole purpose of not going the distance to do extra stuff, but anyway. So yeah, Fantasy Life, I enjoyed it. Void Breaker is a game that I admittedly haven't played that much of. This seems to be becoming a bit of a theme, but I have immensely enjoyed what I've played of it. It's a first-person shooter roguelike made by a solo developer and published by Playstack Games. Have I seen that combo before? It launched into early access this year and it's a good time. It has a fast, fluid and pretty responsive control scheme, some very good destruction mechanics and a pretty decent art style. So there is a mechanic in the game where if you stun enemies they will take increased damage. This is done by using the destruction mechanics or with explosions as well, if I remember correctly. Instead of this mechanic being a reward for opportunity, it feels like a necessity to use because the enemies are so bullet spongy otherwise. Based on enemy spawns or map generation, it can be hard to engage with the stun mechanic in other way than just kite enemies and then just chuck grenades. The thing is though, after playing it myself, I watched a friend of mine play a bit of Voidbreaker, and he played the game so much differently than I did, and it probably comes from, the extra hours of game time he had it than I did, and he played the game so much faster, and it looked like so much more fun than what I'd been experiencing. So I do think if I gave the game a bit more time, then I probably would have liked it more. Something probably would have clicked eventually. But due to its frenetic nature, it's not a game I feel I can sink heaps of hours into at one time. Anyway, I will definitely be playing this again at some point, and I wish the developer the best. So the obvious comparison when you look at Sword of the Sea is Journey. And it is extremely hard to separate the comparison because the art style feels very reminiscent of Journey. The game even has some set pieces that feel like they were ripped out of Journey. And the game was even made by a few of the developers who worked on Journey. Most notably the lead artist. I think if you go into Sword of the Sea thinking you are getting the spiritual successor to Journey, you might get a bit disappointed. Not because the game is bad, because while it's going for something kind of similar, it's a different game and a different experience. The gameplay of Sword of the Sea is where it sets its own identity. A majority of the game you'll be traversing landscapes on your sword over an ocean or sand or some other nondescript loose particles, and the objective of the game is to bring water and life back to these desolate landscapes. The movement in this game is fluid and fun to use. Controlling the main character feels great, although the world design, especially when it comes to parts of the levels that require the players to slow down for tighter platforming segments, feel often at odds with the smooth and slick control style. There are also set pieces within the game that I'm not going to spoil here in case you do want to play it, that lean too heavily either side and the controls being way too loose or way too on rails. It's not something that ruins the experience, but it's something that I reckon most players will notice, mostly because of how good the base controls are. Speaking of good, the art style of the game is an absolute crowning achievement of Sword of the Sea, as it should be. The game looks phenomenal. For the first third of the game I was kind of worried because it did feel like it was leaning on the desert vibes of Journey, but the other 2/3 of the game kicked it up a notch higher. The idea behind adding life and water to all of these landscapes is cool, but the way the effect looks makes the game look astonishing at times. The flip side to this though is that the game does not run well. This may be a PC only problem. I have not looked into how this game runs on the PS5, but unless you have a high-end rig, expect to not be able to run this game at a stable 60 FPS on PC. At the very least though, I could see on the screen why the game isn't running well. The art style is just insane. It's like, okay, I understand why this game doesn't run as well as it should. Like, if you compare it to whatever Unreal 5 slop game comes out this year, why does this game not run well? No, I can see why this game doesn't run well. For a price of $43.95 Australian or $30 USD, it is on the steeper side. Although the game has a new Game Plus mode, if you're looking to do just one playthrough of this game, you're going to be looking at around the 2.5 hour mark to complete, which does put this game on the much shorter side. I do really like this game. I think it's well worth playing. The artistry on display is fantastic, especially for the music, which I haven't really mentioned. For the most part, the game is top notch, but if you plan to play it on PC, I would, kind of wait and see if they do add some more performance patches. I haven't actually looked into this to see if it's gotten better since I played it on launch. And I'll probably also wait for a sale as well, because the game is a bit expensive. I would consider the first Grounded game my favorite game in the survival genre. It has a cool premise, which leads to having a very unique world to run around in. The combat is fun, its story is pretty quirky, the music is great, and the graphics are good. It's great with friends, and if you don't know what you're getting into, it's an absolute blast.
Troll, he's coming, Troll!
Yeah, this is why.
What the fuck?!
I played through the game twice. First when the game had only just been released into early access, or game preview as Xbox likes to call it, and then a second time a couple of years later when it had hit full release. I honestly expected Obsidian to just be done with this game, but I guess it did well enough and the developers thought they had enough ideas to expand and do a second one. So Grounded 2 launched into early access this year. As always with early access games, things are subject to change over time. And I've put about 20 hours of game time into Grounded 2 on release with my friends, and we pretty much finished all there was to do in the launch version of the game. My main thoughts coming off this game is that it feels less of a sequel and kind of more of an expansion. It's more like Grounded 1.5. And there are pros and cons to this. The pros being that the first game is so good that using it as a baseline for your second game is a good place to start. The cons being that the progression of the game all the way down to the way you craft, the recipes and gear you make, it's almost identical. And it kind of left me feeling like I'm playing pretty much just the first game, but with a few quality of life fixes. And that's what it is essentially. So let's talk about performance. This game runs like garbage. It's as bad, if not worse, than Killing Floor 3 bad. Actually, it probably is worse. If there is one true thing that I think is bad about this game, it is whatever going on with the current optimization of the game. When we started our game, I was averaging around the 50 to 45 FPS with recording and also hosting the game my friends and I were playing on. That gradually dropped the longer we played. The longer our game sessions would go on, the worse the FPS would get. Nearing the end of the second day we played, which was around maybe the 10-hour mark of the game, it was kind of reaching unplayable. And like, I have an RTX 4070 Super and my other system specs meet or well succeed the recommended specs of the game. And of the 3 friends that I played with, I probably have the beefiest PC, or I did at the time. Like, while my other 3 friends, they all had performance issues, they had like random FPS drops and sometimes freezes, they kind of only seemed to be limited to certain areas. And one of my friends' games crashed a couple of times, but their overall performance with the game was much better than mine. You know, which leads me to believe that maybe the server host gets kind of shafted when it comes to how well the game runs. Like, I don't think I had that many frame drops, it was just consistently shit, and then it would gradually drop over time. Yeah, there was a time when I was playing the game on 20 FPS, and it was straight up miserable. Like, I do recommend restarting the server every few hours, as well as using the cleanup tool on the menu. It helps a little bit, but not enough. So let's talk about bugs. And because this is grounded, bugs do mean 2 different things. Because most of the bugs in this game have to do with the bugs. Confused yet? Any type of glitch in the game I came across usually had something to do with the bug behavior and pathfinding. A lot of the time it had to do with the buggies, which are the new mounts. One of my friends lost his completely when we relogged into the game for our second session. Another one of my friends had his buggy keep returning to its nest at random. NPC bugs have some strange pathfinding and tend to glitch out on the terrain a lot, especially bees and butterflies. Bees like to get stuck in the skybox, while butterflies seem to get jammed on just anything. I do think this will get better over time, but this is also a problem the first game suffered from, albeit in a much less drastic manner. Do I think you should buy this game? Well, the answer is different based on who you are. I think if you like the first grounded game, you are certainly going to like this, but beware that it is early access and the game is by all means very buggy and the performance and optimization was very lackluster. If you're not down to play a version of the game that isn't finished, then I say wait. If we're comparing how the state of this game launched in comparison to the state the first game launched in, then I'd say this game is already miles ahead. The first grounded game on launch had maybe like half or less of the content that Grounded 2 had on launch. So I don't know. If you have not played either grounded games, then I highly recommend you go and play the first game over this one. The second one will most likely get there, but you're better off playing the full package of the first game. There's more content, it's more refined, and by the time you're done, hopefully the second game will be worth playing. Coming in at number 23 is Mario Kart World Tour. So I thought this one would be a fun idea to do completely unscripted, and I have until I lose this knockout tour race to talk about it. This segment could go for 5 minutes or it could go for 30 seconds, depending on how unlucky I am. So Mario Kart World Tour was the launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2, which was the first ever console I've bought day one in my lifetime, which was a little fun, but most days I forget that I even have this thing. It's not so much Mario Kart World Tour's fault, it's just... there's not enough games that currently interest me to say that this console is worth it currently. But Mario Kart World is very, very fun, and it mostly comes down to Knockout Tour. Like, this one game mode is what makes this game. And you'd think it'd be like the open world gameplay, like being able to like having the stretch of tracks between each race also be like tracks that you race through, and having the game be completely open world. No, it's a battle royale game mode. That's why this game is so much fun. Something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about with this game is that this is easily the best Mario Kart soundtrack. Holy fucking shit, what is going on? This game is so chaotic, it's insane. Just gonna draft. Oh god, oh god, oh god, let me through. Nice. So yeah, the music in this game, there's a lot of like medleys that use a lot of the old like classic tracks and stuff like that. Having the new player limit be, what is it, 32 players or 36 players? I think it's 32 players for Knockout Tour or something like that. It's so chaotic, and I think it borders on being too chaotic. I'm not sure if, we really need double box spawns when there's like 30 players like playing in a single race. It's a bit much. Because yeah, like anytime you're in first place, it just feels like you just instantly get fucking like dominated by like, one of the blue shells or just a lightning strike. It's like, it's almost instant. You can't stay like first place for longer than like 30 seconds. It ever feels like. That's always been the Mario Kart thing. Like you just, yeah, look, this game does a lot of things very well. Like it's solid gameplay. It's solid gameplay. The tracks are fun. There probably could be a bit more going on, like the open world kind of design, like a bit more to make like it's like these in between parts, like just a bit more fun to like drive around. Because yeah, a lot of it is kind of just plain track. And yeah, I kind of thought that this game would get, not that like Nintendo ever does things like the normal way, but I thought that this game would have gotten a little bit more support than it did, like considering it's a launch title for the Switch, and it was also the only pretty much first party launch title for like a month until Bonanza dropped. I mean, there were like other things, but like, yeah. The Switch 2 is slowly starting to like become a console worth having. I mean, if you've got a Switch 1, I'm not sure if it's worth upgrading yet. The Switch 2 is good, but like right now, half of the games that are being released are like being released multi-platform. It's just this game and Donkey Kong Bonanza, which are like Switch 2 exclusives, and then there's Hyrule Warriors, I think. Don't worry, we'll be talking about Nintendo later. This is the unscripted segment because I did play Donkey Kong Bonanza this year, so we will see that sometime soon. Where am I going? Oh no. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh god! Oh, we live to fight another round, and I'm running out of things to talk about with this game. Yeah, so let's talk about open world. This is you can just free roam in this game, which is fun, kind of. There's challenges and like collectibles like spread around the place, but it doesn't feel like it gives you much in terms of doing it. It's mostly just to say you did it, like for the fun of it, I guess. Remember when games used to just be made for fun and you didn't have to be like incentivized with like just crap rewards. Like I said, Nintendo just does things their own way. Like I thought there'd be more kind of like costumes and kidding me. I thought it'd be more like costumes and stuff like as rewards for doing like all of the world like open world content. There are like, I'm pretty sure there are even just like retro like Game Boy tracks just like hidden in the open world that you don't actually get to play in any of the cups in the game. I think the cups are a little lackluster as well this time around. I think the first one is very good, and the last one with Rainbow Road in it is also very good, and the rest are very mediocre. The first one has like this really cool Donkey Kong thing as like the final level, and it was really cool. And then Rainbow Road in this game is amazing. I don't know, if you make a bad Rainbow Road track, then your Mario Kart game's not worth playing. You fucked it. Well, I mean, this is still going. I've kind of run out of things to say about Mario Kart World. It's like, the game's fun. It's a good launch title for the Switch 2. It's not like it's one of the newest games to have that $80 US price tag, or whatever the current price tag in US is, or whatever it is here. I don't know what it is, because games cost differently in Australia, and it's hard to keep up with what things cost because some things that are meant to be like at the $80 price tag in like US don't cost that here. It costs just like, I don't know. Games are priced weird, man. I don't think it's worth the fully priced title, but like if you're getting it like with the Switch 2 as a launch title, then like technically the game only costs like $50, and then I think that's a fine price tag. I just bananaed myself. I'm so good at this game. I mean, we made top 4. Like I haven't played this game in months, like for real. I should keep my Switch out in like handheld mode more often because it is so good to just like launch up a game of this and just like start your day off with it. Just like pick up this. This guy did the exact same thing as me where he missed the box. But yeah, you just pick it up, play a run, like play a knockout tour game in the morning, and like it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's like it's pretty. Like a game's gonna last like what, like 10 minutes, which isn't much, you know, in terms of gaming things, but it is when you're doing an scripted or unscripted part of the video where you thought that you're going to die within like the first minute and you're going to make a gag about it and just like cut it off, but now I have too much time and not enough to say, oh, thank fuck this is done. Ball X Pit is a Breakout inspired roguelike game. It's another game that I went in really wanting to love and came out not really loving it, but I did like it. It's a pretty fine game. The early progression felt a little slow, but when the game ramps up, it really ramps up, and it is a bunch of fun. Great soundtrack, good art style and vibes. The game is addicting, but it has that good sense of power scaling and the ability to break the game with a good enough build that all roguelikes should have. There are a few games on this list where the placing is just down to I don't know where else to put it. I think the craft behind this game is amazing, but it's a game that I don't really have that many hours in, and I don't ever really feel like booting it up when I have the free time. In fact, there are 21 other games that I feel like I'd rather boot up instead over this one. I can't work out the exact reason why this one doesn't stick with me, but because it ticks a lot of the right boxes, and even the early game progression is something that you eventually get over, but I don't know. This one's a bit of a mystery to me. I think it is a very great game, I just don't ever feel like playing it. Clover Pit is their second roguelike and game with Pit in its name in a row. Not that these games have much to do with each other. Clover Pit is what you get when you take the grimy vibes of Buckshot Roulette and then mix it with the gameplay of Balatro, only with slot machines instead of cards. If you have played Balatro, then you know what you're getting into. What Clover Pit does well is atmosphere. What doesn't do well is build versatility. It seems like there isn't a whole lot of item combos that are actually viable to beating the harder difficulties of the game. That being said, when I picked up this game, it took a whole ass day away from me. I felt like one of those people just hard locked into their chairs in a casino, just spinning and spinning away on the pokies. Clover Pit as a game is very aware of what it is, and I like that while it is a slot machine game, it also feels very anti-gambling at the same time. The background story, I will call it, not that it's much of a story, it does have hints of addiction and the ramifications of it. It's probably what led to the player being where they currently are. I'm not sure if it goes much farther than that. I haven't really hit much of the end game. It's a nice set dressing that makes the grungy vibes not just a stylistic choice, but a full commitment to it. Clover Pit, just like Ball X Pit, just doesn't have that much staying power over me, but it's a nice change of pace for someone who wants to play something like Balatro that isn't Balatro. And now, we enter the top 20 games of the year. That means things are going to be changing just a little. So let's get the hype going as we move on to number 20.
And I am steam and brine. Shall we sing of no little thing than iron and steam and brine?
Abyssus describes itself as a fast 1 to 4 player FPS roguelike brine punk adventure. What is brine punk, you may ask? Well, Abyssus is brine punk. I know that's not a real answer, it's the best I've got. Abyssus is very similar to Gunfire Reborn, and I find myself enjoying this a lot more. It's got a good personality, the gunplay feels really good and responsive, The build crafting is fun, if a bit limited, and it does feel like the game can screw you a bit with RNG. A lot of the bosses feel extremely punishing before you're able to learn their attack patterns, and there isn't a lot of variety when it comes to what you experience within the game from run to run. Although there has been updates to try and remedy this, there is a good chunk of replayability when it comes to adding difficulty modifiers to the game, but a lot of the time it makes it feel less fun. The base gameplay really carries the game as far as it has. A lot of the other parts of the game are a little slim, but the developers, yeah, they're working on it. And there is a new update coming on January 12th, which adds boss variants and a new gun, among some other things. I do think the developers are aware of where the game is falling short and working on really rounding out the experience. I got about 21 hours out of this game, so for the price, I think it's well worth it anyway. It probably should have an early access tag on it. As good as I think it is, it didn't really feel like a feature-complete game. That being said, it is fun with friends. It feels like something a bit different. Marking our fourth roguelike game in a row is Shape of Dreams, which, just like the last two games, is a great experience that feels like it hasn't fully capitalized on its potential. But it is the closest to doing so. Like, it is probably a few content updates away from being the game that it needs to be. Shape of Dreams is a top-down MOBA-esque roguelike, and where this game excels in is with the extremely varied playstyles of all the characters and the extensive ways that you can build them out. Progression is a lot of fun, but where the game kind of runs thin, again, is the variety in the actual runs themselves. They all start to feel a bit samey way too quickly. Again, the game is close to getting it right though, and I think a couple more biomes and maybe a few more different endings and final bosses and more boss variants, and this game is the complete package. While I don't have as many hours in this game compared to something like Abyssus, I'm much more likely to pick this one up again over Abyssus because there is just so much more to do. More characters to play and level up, a shit ton of spells to unlock, challenges to do, more difficulty modifiers that are a fun challenge rather than making the game miserable to play. All in all, Shape of Dreams was surprising. I didn't really have much expectations going into this one, but it's very solid.
Pac-Man World 2 Repack. Available now.
24 years ago, a little adventure platformer would be released onto the PlayStation 2 and GameCube called Pac-Man World 2. It probably wasn't the most popular game of its era, but I would consider this game one of the best adventure platformers of its generation, and ranks among some of my favourite games of all time. About a year and a half ago, I would release a retro review on this game. Now, if you haven't watched that video, then the gist of it is that even though the original Pac-Man World 2 feels very derivative, taking a lot of inspiration from platformers at the time, especially taking it from Crash Bandicoot, although it was doing Crash Bandicoot gameplay better than Crash was doing his own gameplay during the PS2 era, the original Pac-Man World 2 is one of the most solid adventure platformers of its generation, and although there are definitely some things that could have been improved on, camera controls were really bad, having pack dots be counted towards full level completion is insane, especially in the auto-scroller and skating levels, and now we have a remake of that game that released in the year 2025. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. Ever since the Pac-Man World 1 remake came out, I was hoping they would make this. And here it is. The remake begins the same way as the old game did, with an opening cutscene with the ghosts invading Pac Village at night, except instead of an animated FMV, we have an in-engine rendered one. I can't say that I really care that much about the new opening. I'm going to put them side by side here, and you can really tell the new one feels a little more stilted and a bit lifeless compared to the old one. It's less cinematic, and while I like the new ghost designs, the characters have less facial animations and there is a bit of character lost here. You can definitely see this is where they decided to cut corners a bit. Also, Spooky's reveal has this weird red lens flare effect that they reuse again in the same cutscene, and then again in the final cutscene of the game. I don't know why they did this. Not the best start, but hey, it's the opening cutscene and...
Pac-Man World 2 Repack.
Okay, so Pac-Man's talking. So for those who are unaware, in the original version of Pac-Man World 2, Pac-Man didn't talk, although for Pac-Man World 3 they gave Pac-Man a voice actor. I can't say I really remember much from that game, I only ever played it once, but they brought back the same voice actor from Pac-Man World 3 to voice him in this game, which I think would be a cool throwback if it didn't make Pac-Man sound like one of those guys like at school hires to come and teach kids that like drugs aren't cool. I mean, the story wasn't much to write home about in the original game because it was all mostly text-based and you can kind of ignore how lame it all was. It's much worse when you actually have to hear a voice actor say some of these lines out loud. Not to mention now he has voice lines when he gets like hurt or he eats fruit or he gets a power-up Pac Dot and yells,
Mega Pac-Man!
oh, what the hell, man. You can turn the voices off in the settings and thank God, but that also means you're not going to get much out of the cutscenes or the story either. So I'm going to be real with you guys. So far, the vibes are really fucked in this game. But luckily, after the absolute shock that is the first 10 minutes of playing this game, it becomes exactly what it was meant to be, and that is a decent remake of Pac-Man World 2. Finally, with a camera that isn't absolute dog shit, the game has been toned down in difficulty, removing some of the insane collection requirements of the original, and a few of the levels have been completely changed, as well as the bosses being completely reworked. Oh wait, I feel like I've seen this boss fight before. Oh my god, are you kidding me? Are you guys seriously taking from Crash 4? So, like the original game, there are Namco tokens, which in the original game were used to unlock more of the classic arcade games, as well as unlock some concept art museum thing. But in this game, the tokens are used for opening figurines from these capsules. It's called Gashapon, and for some reason, Bandai Namco have trademarked that term. Is this a thing in real life? Oh, wow, it actually is. Anyway, you get figurines which you can use to decorate Pac Village with, like a golden version of the lady from the arcade. Okay, that's kind of weird that she's selling golden figurines of herself, but alright. But we can also unbox other things like bosses or enemies and Villager G. Okay, who the fuck is Villager G? You couldn't give her a name, just Villager G? Yeah, so this whole system is weird. It feels like change for the sake of change, and I don't understand it. One of the actual new things that this game has to offer is the Dark World. After beating the main story of the game, you unlock the Pac-Night era levels, which are a few of the levels from the main game, as well as the bosses, remade to be harder. And they are harder, especially the bosses. New levels come with new remixes of the level tracks, which are really great. Builds upon an already iconic soundtrack and somehow makes it better. I wasn't really expecting any of this, and I think it's a nice bonus to the game. As of recording, I haven't actually beaten the Dark World levels yet. The bosses are actually genuinely harder, and I've gotten stuck a couple of times, and I can't tell if it's because they're actually unfair or I'm just washed. But it is a good amount of challenge. Overall, Pac-Man World 2 Repack is a decent remake. It does some stuff better than the original, so I do recommend it. The glow-up graphics and the better camera do make this worth playing. At its heart, it's still a PS2 era game, and that alone does make the game feel a little dated, which is why it is sitting a little low on the list. But this is the game I wanted for the most part, so I can't really complain too much.
Are you glad to see me, friend? Stay calm.
Chronos: The New Dawn is a traditional survival horror game made by the folks over at Bloober Team, the people behind Silent Hill 2 remake. I don't remember the train of thought that led me to asking the developers for a key for this game, because I don't typically like horror games, and as far as I know, I haven't ever actually played like a proper survival horror game before. Resident Evil and Silent Hill are two very big blind spots in my gaming career. I don't think I can call gaming a career. Is that the right word? Repertoire? Experience? I don't know. I'm blanking on the word. I just remembered I played around like 2 hours of Dead Space like 15 years ago. Look at that. Dead Space came out in 2008. Wild. Chronos will likely get compared to Dead Space just due to the monster design in this game. It's very necromorphy, but the monsters in Chronos have much stronger limbs, unfortunately. A lot of the early discourse from the game is like, why can't we shoot the limbs off these things? Nah, you can't do it. It's headshots or weak spots, that's all you get with this one. And even though I haven't played many survival horror games, I kind of knew while playing Chronos that it's something that's going to be seen as a classic or even one of the best of the genre in the years to come. It is a little too sluggish, a little too frustrating, and just a little bit weird. Funnily, game design wise, it feels like the game could have come out any time with the last 15 years and been more or less the same game. It's like a throwback. Not that I can accurately judge what old horror games feel like to play. But Chronos: The New Dawn excels in atmosphere, the environments are unique, creepy, and the story is very interesting, even if it might stumble a bit in the ending, where you kind of wonder what the fuck was anyone's true goal in the end. I think the Traveler and the Warden are two very fantastic characters that are played very well by their voice actors. Say that of all of the games on this list, I think I would like to see a sequel for Chronos the most. This game is pretty flawed, but there is a lot of room for growth. So I really do hope it's not a one and done. I do have a video on this one if you want to see more of my in-depth thoughts.
You and me, we're the best!
Donkey Kong Bonanza is the second first-party Nintendo game for the Switch 2, and probably the main selling point of the console. I honestly think that this would have been the better game to ship with the console over Mario Kart World, although it feels like Nintendo are too scared to ship their consoles without Mario Kart now. That's just what they do. Donkey Kong Bonanza is one of the most cathartic games I've played this year. The gameplay loop, which essentially boils down to just punching dirt for 90% of the game, is really fun. They made punching dirt fun. The developers of these games are just absolute wizards. Donkey Kong is a series I've never really cared that much about, and I only really bought this because I did want to get some more use out of the Switch 2, and this is the game to do it. It's a fun adventure game that does not take itself seriously one bit, and has one of the best sound bites in all of gaming. I don't know what it is about that activates the neurons in my brain. I never get sick of hearing it. So, for a game made for the Switch 2, made as part of the launch lineup of exclusives, I kind of expected this game to run a little better. There were a couple of instances where I experienced major slowdown, mostly when it comes to parts where I destroyed a bunch of terrain in one go, which is pretty disappointing to see in a very early launch title for a new console. So yeah, Nintendo released a new console this year. It feels weird despite the console being one of the most successful console launches for Nintendo so far. Barely hear anyone talk about the Switch 2, and I think that's because at least half of the first party Nintendo game released this year also released on Switch 1 as well as 2. Though of the Switch 2 exclusives like Mario Kart, Kirby Air Riders, Hyrule Warriors, and of course Donkey Kong Bonanza, have all been met with pretty decent reception. The one negative Switch exclusive was Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which is like, if you haven't heard of it, is a similar premise to Astro's Playroom for the PS5, except the game actually costs money and is nowhere near as fun and is mostly all quizzes. What led Nintendo to thinking that they could or should make something like this and charge money for it, I don't know. But if you do go buy it, you get to know all about the fact that the Switch 2 Joy-Cons have a new mouse mode. Regardless, it seems like Nintendo does whatever it likes and it seems to work. I just wish they would, drop the Power Word lawsuit that is so obviously bogus. Patents on game design is anti-consumer and anti-competitive practice and it needs to stop. Rather than that, Nintendo seems to be having a good year.
Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I really don't do small talk. Nice to meet you, too. So you want to go through more of your crazy stories?
My crazy stories? But how are we supposed to get out of here if we don't start to trust each other?
I don't need your trust.
Well, I kind of need yours.
Split Fiction is the newest co-op game from the mad lad himself, Joseph Fares, and Hazelight Studios. Same people who made It Takes Two. And if you like that game, you're almost certainly going to like this one. Split Fiction, gameplay-wise and presentation-wise, is absolutely stellar. The game is an absolute rollercoaster ride and it is so fun. And I would say the first hour and the last hour of the game are some of the most creative and awe-inspiring set pieces I have seen in any game ever. The game is incredibly wild, just an absolutely fun time to be had. I love that only one person needs to own the game for two people to play, just like with It Takes Two. That is something that I never would have expected a game published by EA to let happen, let alone twice. But you can see that it works in getting people on board to play the game, and from what I understand, it did very well. It's a game that I feel is almost flawless in every avenue except one where I think it misfires completely. This is why it is sitting at 15 on my list rather than near the top. And is also why I think that despite there being a massive improvements in the gameplay and overall scope of things, I would still recommend that you play It Takes Two over Split Fiction. So the reason why Split Fiction is sitting at 15 is because of the story and the writing in this game. The story focuses on Mio and Zoe, two writers who get stuck together in a machine that is able to let writers live and experience the worlds they have created in mind. The big theme of the game is exploring creativity and also takes a big stance on theft of IP and copyright infringement, which I do like, obviously. The game retreads ground with the two characters who initially don't get along, who learn to grow and like each other over time, the same way that It Takes Two did, but to a lesser degree. You know, the husband and wife going through a rocky patch, relearning why they fell in love and reigniting their passions in life is a much more touching and personal story that is able to fully realize on that premise. While with Split Fiction, it's two teenagers getting to know each other. And Zoe and Mio aren't exactly well-rounded characters. They are both pretty one note, with, one tragic event sprinkled in for each character to give them a semblance of depth. I like these characters, they're portrayed very well, but I couldn't help but feel that there could have been more here. The game is 12 hours long and there almost certainly was room for more. Mio in particular pretty much has her whole character arc done very early in the game, while Zoe's feels like it's squished right into the end right before the climax of the story. The thing that pisses me off is that the game about writing doesn't have any depth and is filled with cliches and story beats that I could spot a mile away. I would go more in depth, but I don't really want to spoil anything. Overall, I do think the game is fantastic in almost every regard. The game is paced brilliantly, every part of the game goes on for just the right amount of time before switching things up. The puzzles are fun, the controls are good, a little wonky in some areas, but the penalties for screwing up is almost none for most of the time, so it's never frustrating. Split Fiction is flawless for almost everything except the writing and the story, which pissed me off so much. Oh god. Alright, let's move on.
Say hello to Mr. Hammer.
Hello, Mr. Hammer.
Bioshock.
Oh my god! I have become my character. Oh no.
Be advised, a citywide curfew has been enacted. Violators will be shot on sight.
Alrighty, let's see if we can make it through this segment without mentioning He Who Shall Not Be Named. It feels wrong to put Borderlands 4 up so high on this list because there are three major things that went really wrong with it. Firstly, the story, second is the performance, and lastly is the price. But overall, Borderlands 4 is a pretty great game. I played it, I liked it, it got 55 hours out of me very easily, but this is the definition of a game that played it way too safe. While the gameplay is probably the best Borderlands has ever been, the story just felt like nothing. The story is a major improvement over Borderlands 3, I mean, that's not really hard to do. Remember the main antagonists of Borderlands 3? Remember how they were twins? Remember how the final boss fight of that game was not a boss fight centered around fighting both of the twins at once? How do you squander an opportunity like that? That might just be one of the biggest swings and a miss I've seen in my life. Sorry, my YouTube channel wasn't focused around talking about video games when Borderlands 3 came out. I just really want to talk about this because to this day, it still bugs me that they did that. And don't get me started on the streamer angle they did with the fucking villains. Oh god. Some people have said that Borderlands 4 has a darker tone and yeah, but not really. I wasn't really invested in the story because there wasn't a whole lot of memorable characters or moments. It does feel like they've tried to separate themselves from Borderlands 3, and in doing so, they've departed from the main overarching story of the Borderlands universe. I mean, they do find a way to tie into the story eventually, but I liked that the game, for the most part, was more separated. I think the story has always been Borderlands' biggest weak point as a series. Even in 2, which I know people loved, it never really works for me when it takes its own lore too seriously. And even though Borderlands 4 feels a little devoid of personality, I also like that because other than a literal handful of returning characters, everything else is new or detached from the previous games. It actually helps make the story feel refreshing, even though there's not much to it. I think that might be the way to do things moving forward. Just pick 5 or so characters you want to keep from the overall lore of the game, and then move it forward and just make it more anthology based, because I don't know if anyone even gives a shit about the overarching story of Borderlands. Does it anyone? Please let me know. But I could be way off base here. That being said, I don't play Borderlands for the story. I play it for the gameplay, and wow, this was so fantastic to play. I haven't had the time to try out each of the classes. I played Siren for my main playthrough, and I really liked it, which is probably the first time in Borderlands history that I picked a class that I liked straight off the bat. Usually I pick one, dislike it, and change when I hit level 15 or so. Anyway, movement is fluid, gunplay is good, the maps being more open world were great, being able to teleport to your co-op partners whenever you like is amazing. Just so many quality of life improvements, and it makes you wonder why things weren't like this in the first place. If you've heard rumblings, or in this case earthquakes, about how bad the performance has been with Borderlands 4, yeah, it's pretty shit. I have a mid to high end rig, and Borderlands 4 struggles to maintain 60 FPS at times. It wasn't nearly as bad as other people have been experiencing, but it wasn't great either. And look, the recommended specs for this game are pretty high, and if you meet them you should have an okay to decent experience. But, and this is a huge but, Borderlands should not be a performance benchmark game. Have you seen how these games look? Sure, this one looks better than the other ones, but I just played through the Death Stranding 2, and I never experienced any kind of performance drop for a single second. Probably the most graphically impressive game I have played all year, and Borderlands 4 can't even do that on a PS5. It wasn't until people on consoles were reporting shitty performance, old mate Randy decided to stop trying to gaslight the PC player base on Twitter about how bad the performance actually is. It was so bad that they had to delay the Switch 2 port indefinitely until they figure it out. This is probably the reason why the game has gone on sale twice since release, because they've just lost out on a whole console's worth of sales. Apparently Randy's barometer for a long time before going on sale is only a month, or you can wait like another 6 months and most likely be cheaper again. And most of the problems will probably have been fixed by then. Anyway, in conclusion, Borderlands 4 is really good if you can run it. Randy Pitchford is a fucking clown. Let's move on.
En 1996, Jefferson Pérez, un joven marchista cuencano, gana la primera medalla olímpica en la historia del Ecuador.
Gracias por estar acá. Discúlpeme, ya no aguanto más. Ecuador ha ganado. Ecuador, la medalla de oro.
De la noche a la mañana, todo el país aprende a mover las caderas como Jefferson. La marcha se convierte en el nuevo deporte nacional. 5 años después, la selección de fútbol está más cerca que nunca de hacer lo impensable y clasificar al Mundial por primera vez. La victoria ante Perú marcó un antes y un después en las eliminatorias. Los próximos 4 partidos definirán si el Ecuador se clasifica o no.
Dispellote is a one-of-a-kind game. From the presentation to the story it tells, there is nothing like Dispellote. I've never seen a game that is so able to accurately recreate a real place and space and period of time quite like this one. Dispellote is a look through the eyes of a child in Ecuador when their soccer team qualified for the World Cup in 2002. Yeah, I live in Australia, we don't call it football here. Blow me. The game is both a look at the culture of Ecuador at the time and a recreation of the developer's childhood. The way the game is able to convey those feelings is done with almost perfection. I've never been to Ecuador and I don't know much about the country at all, but because of Dispellote, I know what it feels like to be there during a major historical and cultural event. The game's dreamlike quality fuels that feeling of nostalgia, especially for the developer's childhood. It's able to capture that feeling of being a kid and living through a time where you understand everything that's going on around you, but not quite how important that thing is. It's also a very hard game to record because of the art style. It eats bitrate for breakfast. A 12-minute recording is like a 22GB video file. This is like recording with fraps all over again. Jesus. Which is why I had to edit this segment of the video separately from the main projects. I don't hold that against this game, obviously, but Jesus, it was that was a bit tough on the computer. I don't have anything really bad to say about this game. I think it is very effective at what it sets out to do. It's short, but I don't think the game has enough in it to extend the experience much more than it was. I do think that some of the segments may have been paced a little incorrectly, but it's not the end of the world. I think that Despelote is a beautiful game, but I also think that it's a game that I'm only ever going to play once. There is an intimacy I feel with this game that I don't get with many games. It's like I'm living in someone else's childhood. Weird feeling. And yeah, I would say that the game is a bit light on the gameplay elements, but games can be more than just endless shooting and grinding. Like, they can be weird and experimental, and Despelote is a story that can only be told maximum effectiveness in this one specific way. Sure, it could be like a short film, but you would lose a lot of sense of immersion that the interactivity with this game gives you. It's deeply personal and extremely effective storytelling that goes to show that video games can be truly considered an art form.
Emotion running through our veins, heartbeat, love is making waves. I'm facing my fears, not backing away. We're touching skin to skin, the blood is there with it. We're feeling everything, we're only human. No superheroes can save us all in the end. We'll break away with it, we're only human. Emotion running through our veins, heartbeat, love is making waves.
Lumines Arise. Hang on, wait 1 second.
Lumines.
Really? Lumines Arise? Okay. Is the newest game from Enhanced, the people behind one of my favourite games of all time, Tetris Effect Connected, which aims to do the same thing for Lumines that it did for Tetris, turning an old as fuck puzzle game into a trippy audio-visual experience. And when it comes to the audio-visual experience, they absolutely nail it. I think the music is much better than in Tetris Effect, though maybe not as varied. It does lean heavily on, electronic dance genre, which I'm all for. But if you're looking for some of the more experimental vibes that Tetris Effect had, you'll probably be a little disappointed. Visually, the game is fantastic, but this is number 12 on my list and not number 1, and there is a reason why. I didn't really like the gameplay of Lumines that much. It is hard to compare the gameplay of this to something like Tetris, which I consider to be one of the most tightly and perfectly designed games of all time. It's hard to compete against that. Lumines is a frustrating game to learn. If you're going in blind, you do need to do the tutorials, and they are pretty bland. Even if the information in it is valuable, it's a bit of a slog to get through. There are a few mechanics in the game you need that you probably aren't going to be able to learn from just playing the game. It's not that I hate Lumines gameplay. Once I got going with it, I found it to be okay. Just like, with Tetris, when you're learning that game, there are a lot of aha moments where you figure out better strategies to play. But it didn't come as naturally to me with this one. Again, I don't love the design of Lumines, but the fact that it is still so high on my list is a testament to the strength of all the other aspects of the game. Speaking of, how about an award? I haven't given one of those out in a while. Yes, Lumines Arise gets the award for Best Soundtrack, and I went back and forth on whether I should give it to this game or the game that is second place on my overall list. But if the Lumines Arise soundtrack was available now, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. I mean, that's a lie. I can pre-order it, and I've already bought that. It comes out February 2nd on Bandcamp, and I'm counting down the days. Most of the music is feel-good EDM, which I absolutely love, and there are a few atmospheric tracks that break up the mood, which I don't feel as overbearing as they did in Tetris Effect. But the music in the game is so crucial to the experience that if it was any less than what it currently is, I don't think the game would work at all. I can't stress enough how absolutely amazing the music and the visuals are in this game. It takes you on a spiritual journey. It is so easy to get lost in that aspect of the game while playing. The gameplay, I can really take it or leave it. I think that means that this game could have actually just been anything, and I probably still would have enjoyed it just as much. The journey is the important part, and Luminous Arise nails the journey. Just missing out on the top 10 is Haste. First of 2 games developed by Landfall this year, Haste is a game about going fast via momentum-based terrain jumping. It is a simple premise executed extremely well, which seems to be Landfall's strength as a game developer. It was simultaneously one of my best received reviews I did this year, and now my most outdated. I don't know if the people at Landfall ever watched my video on this game, but it feels like they have, because Landfall has fixed almost every single problem that I had with the game that I highlighted in my review. Way too unfair level seeds? Fixed. Losing a life to challenge encounters that seemed non-dangerous? Fixed. Ability to reroll shop items? Added. Overall difficulty of bosses? Fixed. They even added a multiplayer mode, because why not? So in case the people of Landfall are somehow watching this video now, thanks for making Haste not only a great game, but continuing to fix it so it could be even better. The problem with this game is something that is kind of shared between most other Landfall games, and the other one that I will be talking about soon. Shh, don't worry, I'll talk about Peak soon. In that, while Landfall and Landfall adjacent developed games are great at lasering in on making simple and effective games, that's usually just what they are. There isn't much scope outside of the gameplay. With Haste, for example, the game tries to tell a story, but most of it is done in chat boxes. And in a game about momentum and going fast, the story is often momentum killing. You know, the story is fine, it's not great. I reckon a lot of people skipped it. I mean, they added the ability to hold space and skip the dialogue because people were complaining about it. Haste is probably the Landfall game with the most depth to it overall. The depth is a bit clunky in its implementation. I applaud Landfall for trying to do something just a little bit more ambitious, and I don't think they hit the mark in everything they tried to do, but at the same time, they got the things that mattered the most right, and that is the gameplay. The physics are tight, the gameplay is simple and extremely satisfying. The music rocks, and the art style for the most part is really great. And with Haste out of the way, it is time for the end game. The top 10. And I can think of no better way than to start the top 10 than with a musical number. So take it away, Yandulski.
Growing up apart, we shared surprisingly common ground, feeling nothing more than regret. Till the coin got flipped around. Things never said in quantum state now won't remain unspoken. On the path I left behind, I've been roaming with no guiding light, but I'm no longer left all by myself. Together we can win this fight. If I could take another turn, my life would never be the same. If I could get another chance today,
Have you ever watched the movie Moon? It was directed by the guy who did the Warcraft movie, and it has Sam Rockwell in it. I know that's not a very strong endorsement to watch the movie, but Moon is a good movie. Well, The Alters is basically Moon, but with more clones. And The Alters expands on the premise of having to live and cooperate with a bunch of clones of yourself to survive. And where it sets itself apart from the basic premise of Moon is the way these clones are created. Jan Dolsky is stranded on an unknown planet and has to find a way to escape. He hits a roadblock when repairs to the ship require something way past his knowledge, and his only way out is to clone himself using a quantum computer that is able to simulate another reality where Jan made a pivotal decision in his life that led to a point where he decided to go to engineering school, and then created a clone with those different lived experiences and proficiencies. The Alters explores the question of, what if? What if you stood up to your abusive father? What if you didn't break up with your girlfriend? What if you never installed League of Legends? Would you still be the same person? It's a fun theoretical question until you dive too deep down into your own life choices, and then the answer is almost certainly going to be, you don't want to know. But The Alters as a game lets you experience that concept of existential dread through Jan's life instead of your own. I mean, it still comes with some existential dread, but that's because it does a very good job of exploring that story. Gameplay wise, the gameplay is good, but it could have been anything else really, and I probably would have liked it more. And as far as exploring that whole premise of, what if, the game is fantastic. It is an extremely interesting premise, and it fully lives through it. And that is number 10 down. 9 to go. We've talked about a lot of games today, but don't worry. You could say that I'm filled with determination to get to the end. Deltarune was actually the final game that I played this year, despite it coming out in June. It was promptly put on my backlog for whatever reason that I can't remember now. I hope it was a good reason, because Undertale is a game that I absolutely adore. By the way, if you want to feel very old, Undertale came out 10 years ago. You're welcome. This game is being released in chapters, so technically the whole game hasn't really come out yet. The first chapter of the game came out in 2018, and the second in 2021, for free. Then 3 and 4 came out on Steam and Switch 2 as a bundle this year. So I count it as a game released this year because it was bundled as the first 4 chapters. I played the first chapter all the way back in 2018, but I didn't get around to chapters 2 and onwards until I played it again this year. It's hard to talk about this game without also talking about Undertale, because even though the stories of the games are completely separate and take place in 2 completely separate worlds, I do think Undertale is almost required to play Deltarune. I mean, you should play Undertale anyway because it is an absolutely fantastic game, but Chapter 1 of Deltarune in particular you will get a lot more out of because it spends a lot of time kind of breaking your expectations of what the game is going to be. There are also a lot of callbacks and gags that will fly over a lot of the heads of people who have never played Undertale. The downside though is that it is very derivative. Chapter 1 follows a lot of the same story beats from Undertale and kind of speedruns them, making the game feel like a lesser copy with a different combat style. But that kind of all ends with the first chapter of the game. The second chapter is where Deltarune really starts to step away from that, and it is where I think the game really starts to make a name for itself. The story starts to develop much more, the characters get more to do, the combat systems start to feel a bit more robust, everything starts to click into place. And it's interesting that between every chapter you can really start to feel the developers actually getting better at the craft of making this game. The art style gets better, the presentation becomes more interesting, more experimentation with the game mechanics. It's honestly a treat to see. Toby Fox and co could have just done Undertale again, and that's what I feared Deltarune would be, especially after I played the first chapter, but with each new chapter I was playing, I was more impressed with what they were pulling out. The lore of the game is interesting, it takes time to unravel, but it's really cool. The characters are 3-dimensional, with the exception of gag characters. They're a bit one note, but they're meant to be. If you like Undertale, then I think you will almost certainly like this. Just try and make it to chapter 2 before fully judging it. I think chapter 1 is easily the weakest, but the rest of the game is fucking phenomenal. And that is number 9 done. We're really starting to get up there, huh? I think I have a few friends who might be a bit pissed about this next one. Oh, bro, cook some fortified milk.
Oh, you can't cook it anymore. Oh.
Oh, hi.
Cook that. You can cook those.
Cook the cannon.
Yeah, cook it.
Alright, it's time to put on your hiking shoes and grab Bing Bong because it's time to talk about Peak. The co-op roguelike climbing game made in collaboration between Landfall and AgroCrab. You've almost certainly heard of it, or you've definitely seen one of the many clips on Instagram or YouTube Shorts or TikTok of it. This game is an absolute content mill. Even that part in the opening that I showed right before the trailer with the cannon, I posted that as a reel on Instagram a few weeks ago, and that got seen by someone at Landfall. Even though this isn't the first time something like this has happened, it always feels so surreal when an actual game developer sees my content. I think it's fair to say that a majority of the people who are watching this have played Peak or have at least heard of it. It is probably the best game that you could play with friends that was released this year.
Should have been higher.
What the fuck? The barrier to entry is so low that it invites any kind of player to be able to play and enjoy the game. Do you know how to use WASD, spacebar and left click, and you have $10 to spare? Congrats, you can play Peak. And you'll be able to enjoy the game as a newbie as much as someone who has 40 hours plus in the game. The real magic behind this game is how the developers were able to turn such a gameplay mechanic as simple as left click and climb into such a fun and rewarding experience to play with friends. And look, I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking that the game is a very surface level game just by looking at it. Friend slop is a term that gets thrown around quite a bit. I'm not a fan of the term friend slop, but I can see why it's starting to gain traction, especially when it comes to low effort horror games. But I don't think Peak is friend slop. Just because a game has a simple gameplay mechanics does not mean it isn't well designed. You think the game is friend slop, Bing Bong? Something like the help up mechanic seems so simple in premise, but it is a great tool to reward co-play and sticking together. If you have more people playing, that also means that there is likelihood of someone having the stamina needed to make the next climb, or another set of eyes to find the correct way up the mountain. Also, more people means as a group you can hold more useful items or share around the weight limit, which you would think would make the game easier, but more people also means more mouths to feed. And a group of 4 will move much slower together than, say, a group of 2, which may lead to starvation or the fog catching up to the group and killing everyone, or someone letting the intrusive thoughts win and sending another player to space. Having the layout of the maps be randomly seeded and change every day is great for replayability. The randomization of the maps difficulty does seem to scale between very easy and sometimes way too hard day to day, but I don't think that there has been any time that I've thought that the map of the day was straight up impossible, although some of the new roots biomes are really making me think twice about that statement. Do you think the game is too hard, Bing Bong?
I'm not comfortable answering that.
Peak is a very simple premise done well. It has problems, like some frustrating game mechanics. Pretty much anything to do with the mesa is incredibly frustrating. The day-night cycle in the upper difficulties are also frustrating, and I don't find it very fun to play, but overall it is still a blast to play with friends. It's still a landfall game. Just like with Haste, the overall scope of the project is small, and I don't mean the map sizes, they're pretty huge. You know, the game definitely earns the name Peak, but it feels like so much more probably could have been done with the game. Granted, the devs are still working on it, so maybe this will just age terribly. You know, I don't really like the extra difficulty options. It is linear scaling, and I think the game would work much better with customizable modifiers or alternative challenge modes. While I like that the developers have slowly added more things to do in the lobby, the space feels very small and limited, and I think the lobby is probably due for a big makeover. I would like to see a different ending rather than the current, Caldera and Kiln combo. I'd like to see if they could come up with something different there too. But considering this game was developed in a month-long game jam, what this dev team managed to pull off was impressive. It's no secret that the devs didn't think that this game was going to be as big as it was and didn't really have much plans with what to do with it once it was released. So I was going to give Peak an award for being the best game to play with friends, but the Steam Awards already happened and it got the award for that already. I mean, I guess I could still give it the award. It deserves it. I just had like this fun visual gag with my stock footage, man, and I just wanted to use that. So yeah, we'll still give the award for Peak to be the best game you can play with friends all year. Overall, yeah, I do think Peak is pretty peak, and it was pretty close to becoming my most played game of the year for a reason. And that reason is Peak. Do you think that was a good and fair segment, Bing Bong? Whoa, what the fuck? Number 8 down. It's time to put Bing Bong down too, but don't put away your hiking shoes just yet.
Moment, all it takes is a moment. Is it fate that you came this far unbroken? If it's destiny, you wrote it.
It's the sequel to Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus. Norman Reedus 2, Down Under. So I have a love-hate relationship with Kojima, and more specifically with the first Death Stranding game. A game which I love for its insanely creative story, but I didn't really like the characters and the dialogue in that game because everyone just speaks in straight-up exposition all the time and never like actual people. First game goes to some weird and wonderful places, but all of it is bogged down by every character, explaining down in excruciating detail what is happening, the motivations of everyone involved, and their life stories. They all have the worst names ever. The ability to turn a game that the main gameplay mechanic is walking into a 40-hour plus game without it becoming the most dry and boring experience of all time is a work of genius. The game wasn't for everyone, but it was certainly a completely wild swing that could have easily flopped and never captured an audience whatsoever. Death Stranding is a flawed game, but I'll always applaud a game that tries something new and doesn't get it completely right over a game that completely plays it safe. Yeah, I like my games to have a bit of personality, and Death Stranding, for all its faults, is a unique game that has a personality. First Death Stranding was unlike any other game that I've played before, so Death Stranding 2 is more Death Stranding. Except instead of trekking over America, we're in Australia, bit of Mexico. And I'm almost convinced the reason it's Australia this time is Kojima watched a Mad Max movie or two while in pre-production of the game. I mean, why else would he pick it and also use the face of George Miller for one of the characters? Again, we have terrible names. George Miller captains a submarine through tar, and it seems to have some unique tar affliction going on. What should we call him? Tar Man. This girl who has a unique connection to Timefall and brings the rain wherever she goes? Rainy. Oh, this guy is an old Australian guy? What should we call him? Old Oz. Are you fucking kidding me with this shit, Kojima? There is a character the story introduces called Tomorrow, and her character is meant to be a mystery, but I clocked who she was and what was up with her almost instantly because her name is Tomorrow. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played the game yet, but I feel like anyone playing and paying attention should be able to put 2 and 2 together pretty easily. One thing I was surprised by is that Death Stranding 2 doesn't start with some massively long cutscenes like the first game. I think that's because the first Death Stranding had something to prove, while this one doesn't. What I find fascinating is that the game almost feels very light on the story to begin with. The inciting incident for what gets the story properly started only happens maybe like 4 or so hours into the game. And while I do like the story of the game, it's not paced very well. Just like the environments you trek through, the pacing is a whole lot of valleys and peaks. There are long stretches of nothing at all happening in the story, broken up by rapid fire everything happening at once. Wild that a lot of what could be a story with a lot of time for decent character building is mostly told to us through exposition between missions. Now, I don't remember a whole lot about the first Death Stranding. Apparently that game came out almost 6 years ago, which makes me feel things that I really don't want to unpack. Death Stranding 2 feels a lot more balanced in terms of pacing and breaking up the walking sim delivery gameplay though. I don't remember there being much of an emphasis on combat in the first game, where number 2 is very eager to throw you into combat encounters quite regularly. I think the control and the UI are much better to navigate this time around. I actually found myself seeking out combat encounters in this game rather than avoiding them like the first one. And again, unlike the first one, I felt more compelled to do more side objectives. I mean, at one point I just spent like an hour rebuilding roads. I don't know why, they don't really help that much, but I made it my mission for a solid chunk of time to rebuild a giant highway, and I enjoyed my time doing that. The main chunk of gameplay is still trekking across large landscapes with a tower of packages on your back, trying not to spill them anywhere, but the pacing of how quickly you unlock things, to the menu UI, to the explanation of the gameplay mechanics, is all much better, and much more intuitive than the first game. The onboarding experience is so much better, the pacing of gameplay is more fun, the environment seems crafted to better accommodate vehicle usage and the gadgets you unlock. And just real quick, goddamn does this game look absolutely fantastic. The Decima engine must be made of magic, because to experience some of the stuff this game has to offer with not a single frame drop is nothing short of a miracle. There were times while playing that I was legitimately surprised at the things the game was showing me. How do you describe a game that decides 30 hours into its runtime that you can now, out of nowhere, just catch these big tar monsters and then summon them later on like they're fucking Pokemon to help you fight other tar monsters? How do you describe a game where the story will do nothing for a couple of hours only to spring onto you a cutscene with a fight between a mecha samurai and a dude with an electric flamethrower guitar, and have it be equally one of the most absurd and badass things I've ever seen in a video game? It's a Hideo Kojima game. Death Stranding 2 definitely has its shortcomings, but I think I love this game. It can be weird, it can be boring, it can be fun, it almost certainly is pretentious beyond reason, but it's also different. Death Stranding 2 is unlike any other game I've ever played, apart from the first Death Stranding, but it's better in almost every way. And did you know that Death Stranding 2 was one of only 2 exclusive games for the PlayStation 5 to launch this year? That's weird, right? I know that Sony had 2 other first-party games this year with MLB The Show 25 and Lost Soul Aside, but those both launched multi-platform. What if Sony just doesn't care that much about exclusivity anymore now that Xbox is just going up in flames? Or maybe that something else happened. There actually isn't that much to talk about with Sony and 2025, and that's mostly because a certain very costly game called Concord may have had a bit of a domino effect in getting a few other live service projects cancelled. Bend Studio, as well as Bluepoint, were both working on live service games that were both cancelled sometime in 2025. Though not much was really known about these projects. One was meant to be based on God of War. I mean, a live service God of War game should never have made it past the pitch process, but okay. Sony and PlayStation made their popularity, especially over the last 3 generations of gaming, for making well-designed single-player cinematic story experiences. You'd probably be surprised to know that those weren't the only 2 live service games that got canned somewhat recently. There was a Last of Us multiplayer live service game, Spider-Man live service game, as well as a Twisted Metal Battle Royale game, and also whatever unannounced project London studio were working on. All of these games got cancelled over the last 2 years. So that's 6 potential first-party games gone, and they were all meant to be live service multiplayer games. The only one that made sense was the Twisted Metal Battle Royale game, and let's be honest, that kind of does sound pretty sick, but seriously, what the hell? Live service games more often than not fail. It's a golden goose situation. If you can get your hands on one, then it's like, infinite money. But Sony already had one. Well, actually 2 good live service games on their hand. Destiny 2 and Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is something we talked about last year, and that game was able to thrive despite Sony seemingly actively trying to sabotage it. Destiny 2 is now kind of on death's door, it feels like. Sony Interactive is fully to blame for Destiny 2, probably partially though. Bungie was acquired by PlayStation Studios in 2022, though even though PlayStation paid $3.8 billion for the company, they would remain independent from PlayStation, with a clause that if Bungie didn't meet certain performance standards, it could trigger Sony to completely take control of the company. Some of this money would go to acquiring new talent, as well as used as an incentive to keep current talent on. In 2023, however, Bungie would lay off 100 of their staff members. Oh shit, that didn't last long, did it? Destiny 2 had started to underperform due to player dissatisfaction with new content and neglect of the PvP aspects of the game. In an effort to save Destiny 2, Bungie delayed their upcoming Final Shape expansion, as well as putting their upcoming game Marathon on the back burner. In June of 2024, Bungie would release the Final Shape to a decent reception but poor player base retention on release. By the end of 2024, Bungie had lost around 700 staff members overall in the span of a year and a bit. In 2025, Marathon got delayed into 2026 due to some very mixed feedback from its content creator previews, as well as some allegations coming to light that some of the art content in the game was actually completely plagiarized. Well done. In May of 2025, Bungie would release the last Fates expansion for Destiny 2, going to become the lowest played expansion to date in Destiny 2's history. This latest failure would finally trigger Sony into taking full control of Bungie and shifting them away from being an independent studio, restructuring it into PlayStation Studios along with their other first-party studios. Bungie's loss of independence is a consequence of terrible management. I can't say trying to develop a second live service game while your current one is failing is a very solid idea. The many layoffs throughout the last couple of years were an attempt to keep Bungie afloat or maybe away from Sony control, but it instead led to a destroyed work morale. I can't imagine Sony was very happy either. You know, when they originally partnered with Bungie, they were inheriting a very popular live service game that printed money. As of November of 2025, hit its absolute lowest player count of all time. And now, due to the multiple delays, Marathon now has to compete against the already established and pretty beloved extraction shooter with Arc Raiders. So good luck with that. Concord will probably go down as one of gaming's biggest failures, but Sony's acquisition of Bungie for $3.8 billion has to be up there. There is no earthly way they made their money back on that transaction. Anyway, yeah, Sony in 2025. Not much happened, but that's probably because they're suffering the consequences of a bunch of bad decisions they made over the past few years. They just need to stick to their wheelhouse and stop raising the price of their consoles. Jesus. I think there is a lot of life left in this current console generation. I mean, Death Stranding 2 is one of the most gorgeous looking games I've ever played, and it ran flawlessly. I've heard good things about Yotei as well. Remember that, Sony. Come on. Anyway, Death Stranding 2 is a weird but finely crafted game. But for number 6, we're going to drop the weird and just go with finely crafted.
It's now or never. We witches oft are underestimated, but I'm well aware how capable you are. Time would wear us down, but with patience, we can withstand him until our night arrives. This is it. Death to Kronos. Death to Kronos.
Would you look at that? It's another sequel to a game that does everything better than the first one in almost every way. Hades 2 comes from Supergiant Games, the team behind Hades 1, but also Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre. Supergiant have a way of making absolutely gorgeous games and infusing them with a unique style, and churning out some of the best experiences in gaming. I mean, Pyre is probably the weak link in Supergiant's game's development history, but I still think it's good. But Hades 2 is the first time Supergiant have ever made a sequel. I think it might be the best game that they've ever made. It's just a shame that I suck at this game. I suck extremely hard. That of course isn't a criticism against Hades 2, I just haven't experienced as much as I would have liked to of the game yet, because my progress seems to be very slow, but even then, stuff that I have experienced, from like the upgraded art style, the designs of the characters, the voice acting, the music, the gameplay, the weapons as well, everything is refined to perfection. And while I do kind of miss, Zag and Hades' like unique relationship and a lot of their banter and stuff, Melanoy as a character has a lot more agency and a mission that is far higher stakes than the first game, which I find to be an improvement and a better motivation to keep me engaged with the roguelike gameplay loop. But I love this game, and I love the versions of the Olympic gods and their portrayals that are in this game. It all feels very Supergiant. As I said, this studio is able to infuse a unique style into every game they make, and Hades 2 is no exception. You can feel the quality on display wherever you look. Every part of the game is really fucking good and well made. And that pretty much covers it. I don't really have much to say. It's number 6 because I suck at it, and it's not really indicative of the game's quality. I'm just not really good at it, therefore I don't really enjoy it as much. And I haven't really reached that turning point yet where everything is clicking into place. Before we wrap up here with Hades 2, I do have an award to give, and of course it's for best art direction. It's either going to be this or Sword of the Sea, which I think I would have given it to if the game actually ran better. But anyway, Hades 2 is a game handcrafted with love, and you can see that love in every inch of the game. The character design to the world design, effects, everything just looks so goddamn gorgeous. But unlike Hades, the next game I'm pretty confident in saying that I'm decently okay at. Well, I'd hope so after the many hours I've put into it. Let's move on to number 5. When I created this list, I really did try to eliminate recency bias as much as possible. Most of the placings are how I feel about the games I haven't played in months. So naturally, the games that I have played more recently are the ones that will have some kind of advantage, because my thoughts about them are more fresh in my mind. Arc Raiders definitely has the benefit of only being out for a few months now, and it launched in such a fantastic condition. It's currently beloved, and I also love it to bits. The thing that's working against it is that it is also a live service game, and half the battle of a live service game is how well the game will look like 6 months or even a year from now. A lot of things can change, and something that I've kind of learned while making this video and looking back over my 2024 list, if I were to do my 2024 list now, Helldivers would probably be much lower because of all the overpromising, under-delivering on the timing of content. The major performance issues that also arose this year with the game, and the ever-expanding file size that made it impossible to keep installed. Oh wait, never mind, as I'm writing the script, I actually released a beta that lowers the file size of the game by like over 100 gigabytes. The point is, live services are volatile. But in the 3 months that Arc Raiders has been out, I have not been able to put this game down. Arc Raiders is a PvPvE extraction shooter. This is on the PvE if you're playing solos, PvP if you're playing in duos or squads. While I did make a video on this game, I don't really recommend you watch it. Instead, need real convincing on why you should play this game. I think SkillUp's video is great. He makes a good case on why, even though this is an extraction shooter, which is a pretty niche genre, that has some pretty sweaty connotations usually associated with it, Arc Raiders is a genuinely fantastic experience that is pretty welcoming to a casual audience. Personally, for me, it's easily the best extraction shooter I've ever played. It is one of the most fun PvP games I've played in recent memory, and that has also delivered me some of the most unique player interactions I've ever had in a game, where everyone has just the ability to shoot each other on sight. There's nothing stopping me as a player from killing every human being on sight. But if I'm playing solo, way more often than not, I'm not going to shoot people, and they're probably not going to shoot me. The PvE element of this game, the Arc, are such a prevalent threat that do make players more willing to work together. You know, the AI enemy of the Arc are well designed. They are good at reacting to player behavior. They're not going to do the exact same thing every time you encounter them. They will do things that you will not expect, but at the same time won't feel out of the realm of possibility. Like if you're running away from an enemy and hiding in a building, the drones will search for you. They will check the windows. Hell, they even may find a way into the building and try and search for you in there. Percent of the enemies are just simple drones, but Embark have found a way to make them a fun enemy diverse. A lot of that is owed to their behavior. When you shoot a rotor off one of these drones, they don't do a simple like 2-second canned animation you've seen 100 times and go back to shooting you. Enemy reacts to the loss of a part of their flight system, and they will learn how to fly without it. See as a player all of that in detail. Most of the time you have to take out 2 rotors to take out a drone. Sometimes 1 does the trick because the Arc doesn't recover in time and it will hit a wall. Sometimes when you shoot 2 off, it takes a while before the drone succumbs to the weight of losing 2 rotors, and they're able to get a shot or 2 off of you before hitting the ground. Sometimes they just take forever to spin out in general. More immersion to the gameplay. It's the kind of stuff that I miss seeing in more video games. Why Halo 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. Walk into the same encounter like 5 times and start the fight the same way, and each time the enemies are going to do something a little different. It goes a long way into not just making the gameplay feel engaging for longer periods of time, but making the enemies feel lifelike. which is super ironic because the enemies are all robots. Now, there are a few reasons why this game is sitting at number 5 on the list and not number 1. Firstly, the story and presentation. Story setup is easily the most interesting part of the story, but the way the story is told throughout the game is through some very strange looking cutscenes with some of the worst voice acting I've heard in a game this year. So, AI was used in the development of this game, and that means we have to talk about AI. Again, there are a few use cases that Arc Raiders uses AI that I found to be interesting. One example being that they used machine learning AI to create the movements and animations of the enemies, specifically the ones that have a lot of legs. Something like the Leaper was modeled a certain way and trained on machine learning to learn how to walk and move along terrain. And then animators came in and cleaned up the animation a bit. That is a very interesting and smart use of AI that I'm not opposed to. Things get a little bit murkier when it comes to the voice acting in the game. When you create your character, you are able to give your raider a preset of maybe 6 to 8 voices, I think. Now, the way it supposedly works is that voice actors were contracted to come in, give some kind of performance, and then the developers created an AI text-to-speech module to train off of those actors. And the reason that they did this is so that they can have all of the raider voices be able to call out every single individual location and item in the game by name with the ping system. This is the same system that Embark used for the announcers in the finals, but I think it is much better utilized in Arc Raiders. The upside to this is that whenever the developers want to add a new map to the game or something as simple as a new item, they don't have to try and bring a voice actor in for a new recording session every time. Times that by 8 for every different raider voice. Something that would cost a lot of time and, let's be honest, money. This method can lead to a lot of roadblocks being easily passable in development when wanting to add new content, especially if it needs to be done quickly, which in a live service environment especially is very beneficial. Additionally, there is a beta feature in the game where you can mask your own voice as your playable character's voice, which is a very interesting feature that I can see helping more people feel comfortable engaging and talking to other players in the game without getting harassed. There are definitely downsides to this, such as some weird pronunciations of items such as apricot being pronounced apricot, or the ethical dilemma that someone who is a voice actor for a very popular game should now have a very consistent paying job working on the game. On the other hand, we don't really know how much the original voice actors were paid, what kind of contract they signed, do they get royalty, all of that is unknown. The other thing is, do we really need an in-depth system where every item and every location can be pinged by name? I'm not saying it's a useless feature. Having things get called out specifically can help you internalize the information better than a simple, hey, over here, call out. The machine learning stuff I'm okay with. AI text-to-speech I'm a little mixed on. I think it would be okay if they just used it for the raiders and nothing else. But the reason I brought all this up to begin with is I think that it wasn't. Because there is also the main story. So the main characters, i.e. the traders and the quests that they give, while I'm not 100% certain, and as of writing I don't think it's been confirmed, I am mostly sure that all of the cutscenes and the characters in the game that give quests are also using this same text-to-speech module. Because the voice acting in this game is fucking awful. From the cutscenes to the quest explanations, it feels extremely wooden. There is no emotion. It makes it impossible to care, and I can barely stand the voices of any of the traders if they start talking to me. It's shit. I really hope they aren't real people because I would have fired the voice director long ago for letting anyone put in the kind of performance that's in this game. I'm not 100% is because I have played games from the mid-2000s, and I know that there are humans perfectly capable of putting in shit vocal performances. But because Embark used it for the Raiders, I don't see why they wouldn't think they could use it for the rest of the game. That is the grey area that I'm talking about with AI earlier. There are some interesting use cases here that feel like instead of being used for taking jobs, it is helping developers create things that make the game feel unique and interesting. And there's the voice acting. This was originally where the AI part was meant to end, but I had to come back to this video to add something. A well-known content creator by the name of Bricky just dropped a review on Arc Raiders that surprisingly touches on this exact subject and even also goes into the morality of AI in gaming, specifically Arc Raiders. Now, to be clear, I had already written up to this part of the script and the other part with Fragpunk before that video dropped, but because his opinions are so eerily similar to mine, I did want to at least mention this video's existence because he does this subject so much better justice than I ever could. So I will leave a link to the video in the description so you can all watch it if you'd like to. I highly recommend it. He does raise some good points that I'd like to add here. Embark Studios during the last few years, which was an absolutely horrible time for game developers, has had no layoffs or mass firings at their company, as far as we know. And although Embark are trying their best not to call it generative AI, even though the text-to-speech is AI generating a voice line, what else do you call it? This was all made in-house. I mean, which we do have to take their word on a bit, but this is unlike most other generative AI that steals a whole bunch of shit from the internet and then amalgamates it and then calls it a day. Thing is, Embark was so quick to show off their machine learning AI, but whenever this text-to-speech stuff comes up, they get a little bit more cagey with their explanations. Not that I really blame them for that, as we've seen the absolutely massive blowback founder of Larian Studios just got for explaining to that their developers were also experimenting with the use of AI with concept art in the development of the new Divinity game, which probably isn't great, but Larian is another studio, mind you, that has had no mass layoffs over the last few years, and it is in fact hiring more people on. There are major problems with using AI art during the concept phase, as highlighted by an article on This Week in Video Games, which is also a great article about what concept artists do, how AI art is making their jobs harder, and it makes some good arguments on why it isn't beneficial to use generative AI in that kind of environment. I'll leave a link below to the article if you want to read it for yourself. Larian have also walked back on their usage of AI as of yesterday, as I'm voicing this. If all of this talk about AI is starting to get exhausted, then I totally understand. It's exhausting for me too. See, I just want to play a game about fighting giant robots. I want to focus on the morality of should I shoot this guy I just met in Arc Raiders in the back for his loot, instead of did the right people who made this game get paid enough money? And was this whole entire experience built off the back of stolen assets? Look, I don't have an answer for you on what is okay and what is not okay. It is up to each individual person on where or where not the line is drawn. If you don't want to play Arc Raiders because of its use of AI, then it is totally understandable. But generative AI didn't play a part in what makes this game so fantastic. Yeah, the voice acting stuff is sus, and I personally hate it, and I'm going to point it out because it's bad. But same with Expedition 33. Generative AI may have played a part in that game's development too, and yes, some wall textures were generated by AI and they made it into the game. If you want to discount one of the best made, most creative and unique experiences of the year because of that, you're fine to. But you'd also be throwing away all of the real human talent that went into that game as well, which is the stuff that people liked about it, not that one wall texture. And you look at something like Call of Duty Black Ops 7, which absolutely used AI in development, and the art of those player calling cards does look pretty sus, and then they churned out one of the worst received Call of Duties to date. Coming from Activision and Microsoft, who are laying people off left and right, closing down studios all over the show, and banking on AI to make up for the lost workforce, mandating the use of it in almost all projects, not just gaming, but using it to shit up their operating systems. To me, that's not okay. Call of Duty is a fucking mess. I heard the zombies might be good though, but I think it's easier to justify the use of AI when the games are actually good and the use is minimal. Do I believe that using AI art as a temp asset is a bad idea? Yeah, kinda. Do you absolutely deserve to get clowned on that if it makes a release version of your game? Absolutely. Not to mention there is a solid chance that the thing it creates is going to be a massive copyright infringement. I reckon it's a good idea to draw your own line in the sand, but not judge each other for where they draw their lines. The games industry is so shitty that if we have to go through every morally questionable thing that happens within the games industry, then we will find that a lot of games we love were built under terrible conditions. Any AAA game made over the past 30 or so years, especially ones made by Bungie, Rockstar, EA, id Software, Epic Games, Telltale, Obsidian on behalf of Bethesda, and Naughty Dog, just to name a few, all had games that came at the cost of crunch. Employees that worked ridiculous hours and at sometimes unhealthy hours at work to complete projects on time. Most of them were all mandatory or get fired. Probably most were unpaid. Do we want to move on to studios where key individuals were abusive? I mean, that's probably a bit too broad. But sexual misconduct? Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard, Riot Games. If I mention just general sexism in the industry, we are going to be here all day. Point I'm trying to make isn't that you can't play games at all because it feels like everyone is evil, that you shouldn't care about AI at all, but everyone just needs to chill out a little bit. Then the CEO of Larian got absolutely fucking blasted on social media for being open about any kind of use of AI in development of the new Divinity game. And that is from someone who was open about it from the beginning rather than coming out with a statement after they were caught using it. Again, I want to reiterate, my stance is that generative AI should not be a substitution for human creativity. But the whole point of this segment that has gone on way too long now is that I think AI is a tool that can be used for good. A lot of the time it isn't, especially outside the gaming sphere, by people who think that you can replace every step of the process of creating something by just typing a sentence into software. That's a whole nother can of worms I just don't want to open. I think it's okay to have reservations about games that use any kind of AI, and I think it's okay to say that actually, you know what? I don't have the bandwidth in my life to care about this topic. Gaming is more often than not a way to escape for people, a way to decompress. I think it's good to be informed. Cost of what it takes to make a game is something that is often overlooked, but gaming is a shit industry and you can only hope to make it better over time, but you know, I don't know. So my other big gripe with Arc Raiders is something that the game only started to present itself somewhat recently, and that is with quests and their progression. At the start, I thought the quests were pretty well designed. They pushed you to engage with the systems of the game and are a very good onboarding tool for the players to help discover all of the little things that you can do in the game. Then after a certain point, it felt like the developers started to give up. Quests started to become go to a certain place, look for a vaguely described item and maybe bring it back, and then done. Most of the time, these items or the places they are have to be found by pure dumb luck or just going through the areas with a fine-tooth comb, because there aren't very many context clues as to what you're meant to be looking for. But if that mission also required you to extract with an item, then oh boy, it got worse. So there was a point where most of the quests were designed to be done with co-op, except for ones where that required you to extract with an item, and the game would only print out one item for that quest, and then you'd have to redo the quest over and over for each of your friends that you're playing with. They actually fixed this, so it's not really that much of a problem. It's good, but the quest design still sucks ass. I'd like to see them mix it up a bit more for future content, because currently a lot of them are just glorified fetch quests, and I'm not loving it. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea when it comes to Arc Raiders. It is still number 5 on this list. It is an incredibly fun game, and while extraction shooters aren't a new genre, the game is crafted in a way to give an incredibly unique and welcoming experience. I don't know where the term came from. I've always loved the term for Arc Raiders, that it is Tarkov for employed people. Some of the most fun I've had interacting with random people in a video game in years. And normally I don't like interacting with people in multiplayer games, but I do here. And yes, there will be an award for Arc Raiders, and that will be for Best Audio Design. I don't think I gave out this award last year, but it is uncommon that audio design for a game is that top-notch that even like general players will begin to point it out. Yeah, the audio design is top-notch, and I mean, apart from the voice acting, I've never been able to trace the footsteps of other players with such precision in any other game. At any moment in the game, I can close my eyes and the picture that sound design can paint in my mind is going to be almost the same when I open my eyes. A work of magic. Overall, the gunplay is very solid in Arc Raiders, not just when fighting Arc, but with players too. It feels fairly balanced. Arc Raiders is hands down an extremely fantastic game. I just wish it didn't have that extra shit heaped onto it. And if it didn't, there is a good chance this would have been my favourite game of the year. But alas, we still have 4 more to go.
Take your clothes off. It's better if you keep your identity a secret. Here. I remembered you being bigger. I was a little drunk.
What the fuck? I only came in as I thought we were playing Magic the Gathering tonight. I am hoping we still may.
Missing out on the top 3 by just a hair is Dispatch. I want to make it higher, I really do. I love this game. Dispatch is a resurrection of the Telltale formula of story-based games, except this game actually has some gameplay elements attached to it. Or, you know, one that doesn't completely fucking suck anyway. Even though the game was released episodically, it was done consistently on a weekly basis instead of months or years or just whenever it was done with like the old Telltale games. Of all the games to use the Telltale formula, this easily has got to be my favourite. There is no contest. The world of Dispatch is just such a lot of fun. The story is excellent, it's funny when it wants to be, and it also just does a good job of ratcheting up drama and the stakes when it has to as well. Dispatch finds a way to cut through the noise and oversaturation of the superhero genre, and it feels like such a breath of fresh air. I think some of that comes down to the game and characters in particular feeling very well written, but also having the game be very adult-centric while also not being caked in cynicism and nihilism helps the story stand out. And when I say that this game missed out by a hair in the top 3, I really mean it. And on any other given day, I reckon I could convince myself to put it in the top 3 over what's coming, but if I had to point out any shortcomings, it would be that while the game has a very expensive cast, we don't really get enough time to hang out with, get to know too much about everyone who isn't one of the main characters. It left me wanting a little bit more, and while I do like that the story of the game and choices you make influence the gameplay side of the game, it feels like a one-way street, and I would like to see the dispatching part of the game affect the story more. Granted, I only had one playthrough and I may have missed some things. I felt like there could be more room for that. And lastly, I think the game is just a little bit too short. 7 to 8 hours doesn't quite feel like enough, especially considering the dispatching part of the game is so fun, yet those sessions of gameplay never feel like they go on for long enough. There is a really fun gameplay element here that feels super underutilized. And speaking of underutilized, the main villain of the game, and while I do really like him, the portrayal of Shroud is great and Matt Mercer is able to do a lot with the very short amount of time he's on screen. The problem is just that he is pretty much absent from most of the game, which leaves the whole final confrontation a little bit underwhelming, and while do sound like major problems, and I do think most of the bad shit is just completely overshadowed by how good everything else is, story stuck with me long after I finished the game. It's the only story-based game like this that I would love to go back and play again and again, make a bunch of different choices, just to see how things panned out. Because certain choices actually do matter, not as many as the game would have you believe, but more than a lot of the other Telltale games did. The art style and animation are absolutely top-notch, the dialogue is super funny, the voice acting for a majority of the cast is great, and the ones that aren't don't really damage the game or the characters to a point where I feel like they take me out of the scene. Look, I don't think the story is completely airtight because it is a quote-unquote choices matter game, but the whole narrative still follows the same linear story, and there are a couple of instances where I could see a couple of plot holes start to show up. And I'm sure that if I were to go into it, the story could easily just come apart. But the thing is, I was having so much fun being immersed in the world and the characters that I didn't really give a shit. Like, a lot of what carries this game isn't the game itself, but the story, the characters, the writing. You could also just take the whole game part out of this and make it an interactive story like Bandersnatch on Netflix, and I think I would have loved it just as much. Hell, I even made the game less gamey by turning off QuickTime prompts and was just happy watching most of the cutscenes. Which is a feature I very much appreciate because I just hate QuickTime events. I always have, ever since I played Halo 4. Man, that game just ruined QuickTime events for me forever. I'd probably be able to get over it if I, could talk to a therapist about it, but I'm sure they'd just tell me to leave because they have, patients with real problems that they could be helping instead. Dispatch is getting an award, and I think it will be surprising to no one that this award is for the best writing. I'd explain more, but the whole time I've been talking about how much I like this game is because of how decent the writing is. Anywho, Dispatch is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend playing it, especially if you're looking for just good, fun, and especially well-written story to engage with. Also, there is a game element to it, so you aren't just picking dialogue options like the visual novel. And it also introduced me to the song Radio by Bershi, which I've had on repeat on my Spotify playlist ever since I played Chapter 6, which is by far the best chapter of the game. Do yourself a favor and play Dispatch. You won't regret it.
You want this in your report?
What, you're gonna snitch on me? They're just being a soft bitch about it. Bully. How am I being a bully?
Oh, wow, I wasn't expecting it to go straight. That was extra. Sorry.
You're gonna choke on this fucking...
Hey, Robert, could you...
Spaghetti.
Did you eat my lunch? Why would you do that?
I don't want to be a snitch, but Flambe was really hungry. I mean, look at him.
Really?
Yes.
Well, if you're gonna eat it, I wish more of it got into your mouth. Go get cleaned up, then clean this up, then pick me up a BLT from Johnny's, and we'll call it even.
Yes.
Oh, Okay, whatever that was. Listen, Robert. Jesus.
And that is number 4 down. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The top 3. Are you ready?
Soon she'll wake and paint again. Paint a new number, ticking down every year. One stroke, and everyone of that age vanishes into nothingness. Every year she paints again, and every year an expedition departs for the continent with one hopeless mission: destroy the paintress so she can never paint death again. Even if we fail, we lay the trail for those who will come after. Right? We are Expedition 33.
It was reported very recently that Expedition 33 had a budget of $10 million. $10 million! It's a number that almost doesn't feel real. Expedition 33 was recently voted as Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and it rightfully deserves the title. Expedition 33 is a stunning work of art, fantastically fun, and the biggest breath of fresh air the video game industry needed this year. You have heard about this game. You have heard about the awards that it has won. If you haven't by now, you've probably been in a coma. Welcome back to the world. I don't know why you chose this video of all things to help catch you back up on the world, but okay. If there is one video game in this entire list that I think that you should absolutely play, it is this one. It's no contest. This is a game that I believe that anybody who has made it this far in this video should play. Yeah, I understand that I'm coming on a little strong here, but actually no, I'm not coming on strong enough. There are only 7 people in my entire friends list that own this game, and only 2 of those people have actually played it. That is not good enough. You all need to do fucking better. Like, how have more people on my friends list played RuneScape fucking Dragon Wilds than Expedition 33? This is dire. What does the game need to do to get you assholes to actually play the goddamn thing? It is 2/3 the price of a normal AAA game. It won pretty much every award it could possibly win. Everyone telling you the game is good. It's time to play Expedition 33. I'm sick of singing this game's praises. I'm no longer fucking asking. I've tried positive reinforcement, it's not working. So what the fuck do you want? You like good graphics? Well, take a look at this shit. Holy fuck, look at that. You like music? Expedition 33 has lots of music. Listen to this. What's that? You hate turn-based combat because it's too boring? Well, yeah, that's a fair criticism. It's a shame that when it's the enemy's turn, you have to spend your time actively defending yourself with dodges and parries. It's almost like a rhythm game. You even get to beat up mimes. You've never wanted to fuck up a mime before. You don't think it's your cup of tea? Get real. This game is the video game to play in 2025. If you play it and don't like it, then that's fair play to you. But you're really going against a 97% positive rating with 86,000 positive reviews, a game which convincingly won Game of the Year at the Game Awards in a year absolutely stacked with good games, and received little to no backlash for it. It actually received backlash for winning too many awards in other categories it probably shouldn't have been nominated in the first place. Even Astrobot in 2024 got rinsed by Wukong enjoyers, even though if they'd just played the game to begin with, they would have also understood that Astrobot one hell of a fantastic game also. Look, if all of that didn't convince you, then you leave me no choice. Play Expedition 33, or Bing Bong gets it. Expedition 33 reminds me of a time when playing games felt more simple. Just some people who wanted to make a game made a game. It's self-contained, it doesn't have some nightmarish cash shop or battle pass or season pass or anything that isn't designed to do anything other than get you to interact with the game. It's a true video game through and through. I would say that Expedition 33 doesn't do anything that you probably haven't already seen in another video game somewhere else, but it's the way that everything comes together. The story, the art, the music, the gameplay, the voice acting in one cohesive package. And that first 30 minutes is just amazing. Personally, to me, it isn't even the best in everything that it does. It doesn't have my favorite soundtrack of the year. It doesn't have my favorite story. But everything that it isn't the best in, it comes very close to being. It is second or third best in everything that it does. It is the reason why I think that this is the game that everyone watching should play. It is worth experiencing, and I think Expedition 33 is a truly special game, worthy of the praise it has been showered with. Except maybe the Indie Game Awards that it got. So now you may be thinking, after I glazed this game for the last few minutes, what game could possibly beat that? Well, I'll give you a hint. Nostalgia is one hell of a drug.
Soldiers and officials alike oppress the people for personal gain, and the people must turn to thievery for food. Perhaps this is heaven's way of lamenting the state of the land. Men are powerless at the feet of the divine. But even so, someone must act.
Dynasty Warriors Origins was the first video game that I played in 2025, and a few of my longtime viewers who remember my review of this game may remember that I kind of didn't recommend this game. So what's it doing up so high? And the simple answer to that is, as well as every other placement on this list, is personal bias. Nostalgia is one hell of a drug, but I'm not blind enough to ignore that $102 is a very steep price to play for a game, let alone convince anyone who isn't a Dynasty Warriors fan to buy it. But I'm a Dynasty Warriors fan, and I have been since Dynasty Warriors 3 on the PlayStation 2, which is getting a remaster next year that I'm very, very excited for. Dynasty Warriors Origins, from a gameplay and scale perspective, is the biggest evolution this franchise has ever gone through. It is the first game in the series to actually capitalize on the modern hardware improvements and make the 1 versus 1000 gameplay feel real. Combat in general is the best it's ever been. Officer combat is definitely the best it's ever been. The music, you bet, is the best it's ever been. That might be a bit more, subjective, but fuck me, it's so good. The story is very decent, not just for a Dynasty Warriors game. I mean, it's good in general, minus the made up shit for the main character. And it's a bit weird that the game is only able to cover half of the overall story that the other Dynasty Warriors games do, but I'm happy with the trade-off due to how much more in-depth it feels. Is it weird that every male character in the game seems to have an insane amount of affection for the main character? I mean, yeah. I'm convinced that staying up all night with your friends discussing your dreams and hopes for the future is just Dynasty Warriors speak for Netflix and chill. Something that I pointed out in my review that I felt was very strange. Over time I've come to accept it as one of those weird quirks of the game. See, Dynasty Warriors has always been extremely campy. That's just one of its main traits. It's a game where you mow down people by the hundreds in some crazy power fantasy with voice acting that's been frozen in time from a 90s anime dub. It's a staple of the franchise as much as pressing B or circle when the flashy bar is full to do a huge powerful attack. It's been there from the start and is probably never going to go away. And it would feel weird if it was gone. By being an improvement in almost every single metric that I could have done with the series, there is one thing that the game definitely regressed in, and that is playable characters. Instead of a massive roster of playable characters and styles, there is one playable character, and that being the generic anime fuckboy Zillion. He is not as cool as the game thinks he is, or cool as any of the other characters in the game for that matter. The iconic roster of characters that you've come to know and love are relegated to bodyguard duty with a limited time cameo window to play as them like every now and then. Now, to be fair, whenever you are able to take control of these other characters, the ones that we all know and love, it is the power fantasy you want it to be. Somehow the game is able to create an even bigger power fantasy in a game that is essentially itself just one big power fantasy. That's impressive. And had this game given us a decent roster of the original cast of characters, fully playable rather than cameo parts, this probably would have been the perfect Dynasty Warriors game. It was so fucking close. I want to see more. I want to see what this kind of gameplay is like with a cast of characters with their own unique movesets, just like the old days. I want to see a sequel that tackles the other half of the story. And I'm really hopeful that this game is just the base level of quality that we're going to get with Dynasty Warriors, and that future installments are going to expand on what we have here, because this is special. We are actually getting a DLC for the game in late January, unlock some new scenarios for the game, which will involve what would happen if you take the sides of some of the villains of the game, which is cool, along with a bunch of other stuff. $50 is a pretty hefty price point, so I do hope this is a fully featured expansion. I'm sure you'll probably hear from me soon about it. And that's it. We have one more game. I'm not going to hold you in suspense or anything. By process of elimination, you should all probably know what this is going to be. So without further ado, my number one game of the year.
I'm not meant to be here. I'm a fighter. I'm meant to be in the arena, in combat. But instead, I'm out here in the middle of the woods, running a tea shop. So, what does running a tea shop involve? Well, there's a lot of gardening, and I've had to get used to the pretty unique tea machine they've got here. And when all the chores are done, sometimes I'll just sit on a bench and do absolutely nothing. It's not fighting, but it's peaceful. And what's weird is that I actually feel good. I'm happy. I can stop running now. I can stop. I can stop. I can stop running. This is good for me. I need to enjoy this. I feel good. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy.
Alright. All of you longtime viewers and subscribers knew Wonder Stop was going to be somewhere near the top. I mean, the video I made about it called it a borderline masterpiece, and I stand by those words. I don't have the confidence myself to really declare any game a masterpiece, but there are very few times in my life where I've played a game where it had a story that resonated with me so well that it felt like it was speaking to me personally. For the most part, I kind of knew that this was going to happen before I played it, because the lead writer and director of Wonder Stop is one of the people who was able to do the exact same thing before with the Beginner's Guide, which was a game that blended a story about artistic intent and criticism with a story about creating custom maps on the Source engine. It's a bit weird, but I love it. Wonder Stop is instead more about mental burnout, failure, self-expectations, finding purpose in life outside of just the things you're good at, just to name a few things. It's a story that sounds incredibly heavy, and it is at times, but the main theme of the game is also integrated into the gameplay itself. And the main theme of the game is that it is okay to take some time for yourself, to relax and think about things for a bit. Wonder Stop is a cozy game, and it really means it. It's a game about making tea. You farm the plants you need to make increasingly elaborate tea orders throughout the game, and that's kind of it. The entirety of the gameplay is as hard or as easy as you make it. There is no time limit. You need a hint, the game will give it to you. You need the whole answer of what you need to do, the game gives it to you. Wonder Stop understands that to make a game truly cozy, it needs to feel truly cozy. And it trusts the player to be smart enough to choose at what pace that they would like to play the game at. The story is about Alta, a tournament fighter on a long undefeated run of being the champion until one day she lost a fight. And then after that loss, she continued to lose, and each loss leaving a bigger weight on top of her. She decides to seek out one of the best trainers in the world, and on her way there, she collapses from exhaustion in the woods, where she wakes up in a clearing with a tea shop owned by Borrow. Suggests that while she recovers and gains her strength back, she should, help him out at the tea shop by making tea. The real accomplishment this game makes is how it is able to balance the heavier themes of the story with the coziness of the gameplay without either one taking over. The way it does this is the story is meant to personally relate to you so you can see the effects of what the calming gameplay can do. It's almost like therapy in game form. Obviously it's hard to relate to a champion tournament fighter or all of a sudden, not being the best, but it's deliberately not hard to substitute that scenario for one of your own. Because the feeling of mental burnout from working too hard for too long and feeling like there just wasn't any point, the emotion that the game is trying to get across, that isn't hard to relate to. The game doesn't specifically spell anything out to you, and it's one of those games where a lot is left up to interpretation, which is a thing I generally tend to find incredibly frustrating in a lot of media, but not here. While I don't want to spoil the ending of the game, I will say that Alta's story does not have a clear-cut ending. And that's because I feel like the game is smart enough to identify that this is a very personal problem, but it's also smart enough to say that we don't have all of the answers, or even any of the answers. Maybe just take some time, make some tea, and then see if that helps. So I started this list of games all the way back at the start of the year. Every time I would play a new game, I would add it to the list and rank it roughly where I thought it should go at the time. Then once I was certain that was it, then I did a bit of reordering and then started writing the script. There was one game that never changed its spot throughout the entire year and was something that I considered the best game of the year as soon as I had played it, and it stayed at the top slot, right up until I got to the part when I had to write about how I felt about Wonderstop. See, throughout the video, I've been telling you that this is my list. I have put games lower than they probably deserve and others maybe higher than they deserve. But the reason I have been repeating this fact throughout the entire video isn't just for you, it's for me too. The original game that had the top spot so long was actually, probably to nobody's surprise, Expedition 33, because that game is fucking amazing. It is objectively probably a better game, but this list is subjective. No other game was able to speak to me the same way that Wonderstop did this year. And I realized as soon as I started writing about this game that it had to be number one, because I was so sure that the list was solid, but no, I jumped the gun and it cost me time. This huge ass video didn't already take me long enough to make. But I think that was worth it, because this whole thing wouldn't matter if I didn't do justice to what I really thought, and I think that Wonderstop is my favourite game of the year. The writing is just so beautiful, even if it may be a little pretentious, but hey, I'm a little pretentious, so that's probably why I like it. It hits all the story beats it needs to with precision, and it nails the emotion when it has to. The art style is gorgeous, and the accompanying music fits the game so well. Wonderstop really is the complete package for me, and although I do remember having some critiques all the way back in March when I reviewed it, most of those critiques seem so inconsequential due to just how good the game is. Look, no piece of media is perfect. I could go through every game that we just looked at over the past however many hours and pick one thing I absolutely disliked about it, no matter how good I thought it was. In fact, why the fuck not? This video's already gonna be late, who gives a shit? They made Pac-Man boring. Everything. Which one was this one again? Too juvenile. It's not Killing Floor. A lazy remaster of a remaster. The price. The hell I went through to review it. Monetization hell. Felt too low off it. Repetitive. Reignited my cynicism against early access games. The game ran so poorly I refunded it. Frustratingly janky to play. Didn't really gel with the gameplay. Tedious. My hands hurt while playing this. My eyes hurt while playing this. It's Persona 5 but worse in every way. The game is ugly as sin. Pretty much a walking sim. Bit of a frustrating loop. Incredibly unfair. Just a bit too unfocused. Just a bit too bland. I don't understand why the level progression is the way that it is. A lot of depth. The runs are way too long. The game is super janky. The game is a little one note. Could have used a bit more experimentation. Also could have used a bit more experimentation. The main story is kind of shit. Writing's a little bit cringe. Grindy as hell. The stun mechanic can sometimes be very frustrating to play around. Performance sucks, and so does the controls in certain areas. It's just the performance with this one. Open world, not much to do. Slow to get momentum. Limited in terms of run diversity. Also limited in terms of run diversity. Also limited in terms of run diversity, but slightly less than the other two. Water levels. Clunky and frustrating. I actually have to play the game to hear. The writing sucks. The performance sucks, somehow. Certain sequences go on for a bit too long. I don't really care for Lumines, the game. The boss design was pretty awful. The lip syncing and animations need work. Chapter 1 feels like it's treading too much of the same ground as Undertale. Certain game mechanics feel incredibly unfair. Oh Jesus Christ, where do I start with this one? I'm too bad at it. The voice acting. Gameplay segments could definitely have used some more work and definitely needed to be longer. Navigating the levels can be a bit of a nightmare, especially if you need to revisit certain levels later down the line to like come back and beat a mini-boss that you're now strong enough to defeat. The minimap is goofy as fuck. And look, you may think that I'm too negative or too cynical, and while I do find it easier to point out faults in a game than praise the things it does right, I do also believe the opposite is true, that I could go through each of these games again and do the same thing and point out one positive thing from each game no matter how much I hated it. Oh god. There is a decent premise for the game here. The atmosphere is authentically Australian. The broom controls are good. It's kind of funny at times. The new monster designs, especially the Siren, are great. The updated visuals, especially for the cutscenes, look great. Same as Gears, the visuals and cutscenes look great. Has a competent, if cheesable, battle system. Solid gameplay. Siggies. There are a few sandbox elements to the game that can lead to some unpredictable and fun, chaotic moments. I love the art style. When the game actually worked, it was fun to play. The music suits the vibes of the game. Great sense of style. Uniquely designed. Holy hell are the animations, especially of the special abilities, so good. Was able to translate RuneScape to a survival game in a pretty fun way. Still Persona 5. Solid gameplay. Batshit insane. Great art style and presentation. Fun for the first few hours. Amazing sense of humour. Solidly designed game. Skeletons on skateboards. You get to stick it to the stickmen. Slick UI, fun combat minus corruption. Also love that the developers are listening to the players. Enemy design. Also go-karts. I like the first hour of the game a lot. Perfectly paced. Also music. Really cute. The pirate ship gameplay is actually really fun. Fantastic vibes. Packed full of content. Extremely slick controls. Just look at the game. Holy shit. It's grounded 1.5. That's a good thing, trust me. Knockout Tour is the most fun I've ever had playing in Mario Kart. Satisfying as fuck. Makes me feel like a degenerate gambler with none of the downsides. Sea shanties. So much stuff to unlock. The music, especially the new tracks for the hard world levels. Atmosphere and characters are good. The gameplay is amazing. The gameplay is also amazing. Tells an extremely personal story in a way that I haven't seen before. Everything except the gameplay. Base gameplay is so simple, yet so satisfying. The story, obviously. The game is great at changing things up between chapters. Each new one is an improvement over the last. It's peak. Jesus Christ, where do I start? Art style, obviously. Sound design, obviously. The writing, obviously. Pretty much everything. The gameplay and sense of scale is the biggest this series has ever done, and it is so great for it. My point being that almost every game has something to like about it and something to dislike about it. But with Wonderstop, all I remember is the good stuff, or I've repressed the things that I didn't like. My point being that almost every game has something to like about it and something to dislike about it, and there is a solid chance if you pick this game up, you aren't going to like it as much as I have. My admiration for this game is exactly that. It's mine. So if I have done my job correctly, then you at least know why Wonderstop is my #1 game of the year. If I have done my job right, then this whole list should make sense, but I would not be surprised if some of my hot takes have riled some people up, and that's fine. Go make your own list with blackjack and hookers. This list is for me. Obviously, I hope you all had a fun time along on this ride with me. If you're still watching, you probably liked the video or had it on the background or fallen asleep to it. You should let me know in the comments what your favorite game of the year was, and, also don't forget to like and subscribe. By the time this video actually comes out, we are probably almost 2. Oh god, I hope it's not 3 weeks into 2026. I'm probably going to take some time to catch up on some games. I picked Resident Evil 4 up on a sale recently so I could try and play that before Requiem comes out. Because I'm interested in Requiem, but I've never actually played a Resident Evil game before, so I thought I'd, play the supposed best one. You know, as for other things that I'm excited for coming out in 2026, a major DLC for Dynasty Warriors Origins is coming out very soon, as well as Dynasty Warriors 3 Remaster in March. Eugenics is coming in February, developed by Edmund McMillan, one of my favourite indie devs of all time. Speaking of, Super Meat Boy 3D is coming out in 2026. I played the demo for it, and I'm not 100% on it, but I feel like it should at least be good. Demon Tides is also coming in February, which was another one of my favourite Steam Next Fest demos from last year. Dreamer looks very interesting. I played the demo for Pragmata not too long ago, and now I'm pretty excited for that one, and that's coming in April, as long as it doesn't get delayed again. Mixtape, Big Walk, and Tears of Metal are some of my other pretty hyped games coming out in 2026, but they all have undetermined release dates for now. Look, I don't think 2026 is going to be as good a year for games as 2025, but still plenty to look forward to. I think I would probably struggle to beat the amount of games that I played this year. I mean, I didn't even count all the demos I played during Steam Next Fest. That had like another 50, plus the demos from devs got emailed to me. Oh, I'm not going to count all that. We'd be in the hundreds by now. This video would never come out. As for this channel in 2026, I've got a few ideas for some more large-scale projects, but luckily they aren't time-sensitive, so I'm definitely excited to get back into some more small-scale things. Depending on how it goes, I think the DLC for Dynasty Warriors Origins will probably be the next thing I'm going to take a look at. It'd be fun to start this year off with a DLC for the same game I started last year off with. But if there are any upcoming games that you think are well worth, looking at, then let me know. So I think that's it. We made it. That's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it. Thanks to my YouTube members. I'm sorry my upload schedule has been very inconsistent. I hope that this video makes up for that somewhat. Thanks to all of the developers of the games that I talked about today. Video games are an art form, and the sacrifices and hard work you guys to make the wondrous experiences you are able to give players like myself will always be appreciated. And yeah, sorry to the devs who I shit on the game. Bye.